23 minutes. That's all Adrian Mercer had to rewrite a corrupted trading algorithm before the market opened and destroyed everything he'd secretly built. His hands moved across the keyboard while 200 employees stared through the glass walls, watching the quiet assistant they'd ignored for months, suddenly commanding the CEO's terminal. The woman standing beside him, Emily, the catering worker they'd humiliated yesterday, was the only person in that room who believed he could do it. Nobody knew the terrified man desperately typing code owned the entire company. If you want to see how a billionaire hiding as nobody saved his empire with the help of the one person who saw through his disguise, stay until the end and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Mercer Global Investments like it was trying to break through. Adrian stood in the shadow of a marble column on the 43rd floor, watching the executives file into conference room A with their $1,000 shoes and their practiced smiles that never reached their eyes. He'd bought this building 6 years ago. None of them knew that. "Mercer, you coming?" David Chen, the operations manager, stuck his head around the corner. "We need you to set up the presentation equipment." Adrian nodded and grabbed his tablet. David still thought his last name was Murray. Adrian Murray, the quiet guy from operations who showed up early, stayed late, and never caused problems. The kind of employee people forgot about the moment he left the room. That was exactly how Adrian wanted it. 3 years ago, after Sarah died, he'd realized something that changed everything. Everyone who smiled at him wanted something. The board members wanted decisions. The investors wanted returns. The women at charity galas wanted the penthouse and the name and the life that came with being Mrs. Adrian Mercer. Nobody wanted him, so he disappeared. Well, not completely. He'd restructured everything through a web of trusts and shell companies so complicated that even his own legal team lost track sometimes. Put his cousin Richard, decent guy, terrible with numbers, in the CEO's chair as a figurehead. Then Adrian had created a false identity, complete with tax records and a rental history in Queens, and walked into his own company's HR department asking for a job. They'd hired him as an operations assistant for $48,000 a year. It was the freest he had felt in a decade. "Emily, move faster. The executives are already seated." Adrian glanced toward the catering station where a young woman in an ill-fitting black uniform was wrestling with an industrial coffee maker that clearly hated her. Her name tag said Emily Carter, in letters someone had printed crooked. She had dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, and her hands shook slightly as she poured coffee into the silver carafe. "I'm sorry, the machine keeps..." She hit the button again. Nothing happened. The catering supervisor, a woman named Margaret with a face like she'd been sucking lemons for 30 years, grabbed the carafe from Emily's hands. "Just take the coffee in. Now. And don't embarrass us." Emily's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Adrian watched her load the cart with cups and cream and packets of sugar that would probably cost more than she made in a day. Her uniform sleeves were too long. She'd rolled them up, but they kept falling down. Something about that detail bothered him more than it should. "Adrian?" David was waiting by the conference room door. "Right, sorry." He followed David inside, keeping his eyes down the way he always did. The room smelled like expensive cologne and ambition. 12 executives sat around the glass table, most of them on their phones, already bored before the meeting started. Adrian's cousin Richard sat at the head of the table, looking nervous. He was wearing a blue tie today. Sarah had bought Adrian that exact tie for their anniversary 4 years ago. Seeing it on Richard's neck made Adrian's chest tight. "Gentlemen, ladies," Richard cleared his throat. "Thank you for coming. Today we're reviewing the Q4 projections for the automated trading division." Adrian moved to the corner and started connecting the laptop to the projection system. His hands knew this equipment better than the people who'd installed it. He'd designed half the building's infrastructure himself, back when he'd still cared about things like that. Now he just cared about getting home before Sophie's bedtime. The door opened and Emily pushed the coffee cart in, moving carefully like she was afraid of breathing too loud. Adrian watched her from the corner of his eye as she approached the first executive, a man named Patterson who ran the derivatives desk. "Coffee?" Her voice was quiet. Patterson didn't look up from his phone, just held out his cup. Emily poured, her hand steadier now. She moved down the line, filling cups, offering cream and sugar in a voice barely above a whisper. Most of them ignored her completely. "Volatility models are showing significant improvement," Richard was saying, pulling up a slide full of numbers that Adrian knew by heart. Our new algorithm has reduced risk exposure by... Excuse me. Emily had reached the end of the table, near the projection screen. By 17% across all major... I'm so sorry. Excuse me. I just need to... Emily was trying to reach around Patterson's chair to place a cup on the credenza behind him. Patterson shifted without warning. His elbow knocked Emily's arm. The coffee cup tilted. For a fraction of a second, everyone in the room froze. Then the coffee hit the floor in a splash that sounded impossibly loud. Brown liquid spread across the white marble, reaching toward the power outlets near the projection screen. Jesus Christ! Patterson jumped up, coffee on his sleeve. Are you kidding me? I'm so sorry, Emily dropped to her knees, pulling napkins from her apron. Do you have any idea how much this suit costs? Patterson's face was red now. More than you make in 6 months, sweetheart. Sir, I really didn't mean... Get someone competent in here. Patterson turned to Richard. This is what happens when you hire the cheapest catering company you can find. Richard looked uncomfortable. I'm sure it was an accident. An accident that's now interrupted a multi-million-dollar strategy meeting. That was Jennifer Torres, the head of risk management. She didn't look angry, just annoyed, like Emily was a mosquito buzzing around her head. Can we get her out of here so we can continue? Adrian stayed in the corner, his hands gripping the edge of the equipment cart. He should say something. He'd seen exactly what happened. Patterson had moved his chair right into Emily's path, but Adrian Murray didn't speak up in meetings. Adrian Murray was invisible. Emily gathered the soaked napkins with hands that were shaking again. I'll get this cleaned up right away. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize, just go. Torres had already turned back to her laptop. Emily stood, her face burning red, and pushed the cart toward the door. Adrian watched her profile as she passed him. Her eyes were bright with tears she wouldn't let fall. The door clicked shut behind her. As I was saying, Richard was trying to get everyone's attention back on the presentation, but Adrian wasn't listening anymore, because he was staring at the projection screen, at the numbers Richard had pulled up during the interruption, and his blood had gone cold. The volatility model. Something was wrong with it. Very, very wrong. Which means by end of quarter we should see returns in the range of... Richard clicked to the next slide. Adrian's eyes tracked across the formulas displayed on the wall. His mind was already running calculations, checking the inputs against what he knew the markets were doing, what they'd been doing for the past 6 months. The data source. They were pulling from the wrong data source. Richard? The word came out before Adrian could stop it. The room went quiet. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward the corner where Adrian stood. Richard blinked. Yes? Adrian's heart was pounding. He wasn't supposed to talk in these meetings, wasn't supposed to have opinions about trading strategies. He was just the guy who connected the HDMI cable. But if he was right about this... Sorry, Adrian gestured vaguely at the screen. I think there might be a small technical issue with the display. Can I just... The display looks fine to me, Torres said. It's just, the formulas on slide 17, they seem... Murray. Patterson was still dabbing at his sleeve with a napkin. We hired you to make the equipment work, not to interpret quantitative models you couldn't possibly understand. Adrian felt his face heat. Right, of course. Sorry. He stepped back against the wall. Richard continued the presentation, and Adrian continued staring at the screen, watching the algorithm that was going to destroy everything his company had built. The meeting ended 40 minutes later. Adrian waited until everyone filed out, then shut down the projection equipment with hands that felt numb. The volatility data was from August. It was November. The algorithm was making trading decisions based on market conditions from 3 months ago. Once the automated system went live tomorrow morning, it would start executing orders based on patterns that no longer existed. The losses would be catastrophic. Adrian pulled out his phone and opened the encrypted app he used to monitor the company's real-time operations. Even from his fake identity, he'd built himself backdoor access to everything that mattered. The trading algorithm was scheduled to activate at 4 a.m., 30 minutes before the New York Stock Exchange opened. He had less than 12 hours. Hey, you still here? Adrian looked up. David was standing in the doorway, already wearing his coat. Yeah, just finishing up. You okay? You look kind of stressed during the meeting. Adrian forced a smile. Just tired. Sophie had a nightmare last night, didn't get much sleep. David's expression softened. He had 2 kids of his own. How old is she now? 7? That's a great age. They still think you're a superhero. David checked his watch. Listen, I'm heading out. You should too. Go home to your kid. I will. Just need to lock up here first. David left. Adrian stood alone in the conference room, his reflection ghostly in the dark windows. Beyond the glass, Manhattan stretched out in a maze of lights, millions of people living their lives with no idea that tomorrow morning one of the city's largest investment firms might start bleeding money like a slaughtered animal. He should go to Richard right now, explain everything, fix this the official way. But that meant revealing who he really was. It meant becoming Adrian Mercer again, the billionaire, the owner, the man everyone wanted something from. It meant losing the only normal life he'd built since Sarah died. Adrian closed his eyes. Sophie's face appeared in his mind, her gap-toothed smile. The way she held her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Carrots, tucked under her chin when she was scared. If the company collapsed, thousands of employees would lose their jobs. Pension funds would evaporate. People with families, with kids like Sophie, would suffer. He couldn't let that happen, even if it cost him everything he'd been protecting. Adrian grabbed his bag and headed for the elevator, already pulling up the algorithm's source code on his phone. He'd need his home computer to fix this properly. The encryption alone would take hours to... The elevator doors opened on the lobby level, and Adrian saw Emily. She was sitting on one of the leather benches near the security desk, still in her catering uniform, her face in her hands. Her shoulders were shaking. Adrian stepped out of the elevator. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor. Emily looked up and quickly wiped her eyes. Oh, hi. Hi. Adrian stopped a few feet away, suddenly aware he had no idea what to say. Are you okay? I'm fine. She tried to smile. Failed. Just having a moment. I'll be out of here in a minute. You don't have to leave. Yeah, I do. My shift ended 20 minutes ago, and I've got another job across town at 8. She checked her phone. If I leave now, I can maybe get 3 hours of sleep before... Her voice cracked. Adrian sat down on the bench across from her. What happened up there wasn't your fault. Doesn't matter. Margaret already told me I'm not getting called back. Emily's laugh was bitter, which is perfect because my mom's medication costs just went up, and I was counting on the extra shifts this week to cover it. Your mom's sick? Stage 3 lymphoma. She's doing okay mostly, but the treatments... Emily shook her head. Sorry, you don't need to hear about this. It's okay. They sat in silence for a moment. The security guard at the desk was pretending not to listen, while absolutely listening. Can I ask you something? Emily was looking at him now, her eyes red but focused. Why did you try to speak up during the meeting? Adrian blinked. What? When you said there was a technical issue, that wasn't about the display, was it? I don't know what you said. You were staring at those formulas like they personally offended you. Emily leaned forward. And when that Patterson guy shut you down, you got this look on your face, like you knew something nobody else in that room knew. Adrian's heart started beating faster. I'm just an operations assistant. Right. Emily didn't sound convinced. An operations assistant who shows up before everyone else and leaves after everyone's gone. Who knows how to fix literally any piece of equipment in this building? Who reads financial reports in the break room when he thinks nobody's watching? You've been watching me? I notice people. Emily stood up, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Especially people who don't fit. She walked toward the exit. Adrian stood too, his mind racing. Emily, wait. She turned. There is something wrong with the presentation, Adrian said quietly. Something really wrong. I knew it. But I can't. I'm not supposed to... He ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. It's complicated. So uncomplicated. I can't. Not here. Not... Adrian checked his watch. 6:47 p.m. Sophie would be waiting with Maria, their nanny. Do you have to go to your other job right now? Yes. I need the money. What if I paid you for tonight, double what you'd make? Emily's eyes narrowed. Why? Because I need help fixing something, and I think... Adrian took a breath. I think you might be the only person who'd actually help me without asking questions I can't answer. That's cryptic. I know? Emily studied his face for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and typed something. Fine, but I'm texting my roommate your description and telling her if I don't check in by midnight, you're probably a serial killer. That's fair. And I want the money up front. Adrian pulled out his wallet, the cheap one he carried as Adrian Murray, and counted out bills. $200, mostly 20s. It was literally all the cash he had on him. Emily took it, counted it, then looked at him with something that might have been respect. Okay, where are we going? My place. Super serial killer vibes, but okay. I have a 7-year-old daughter. Serial killers don't usually have bedtime routines. Fair point. Emily followed him toward the exit. So what's actually wrong with that presentation? Adrian pushed through the revolving door into the November rain. Everything. Adrian's apartment was nothing like Emily expected. She'd assumed, based on the cheap clothes and the Queen's address he'd mentioned once in the break room, that he lived in some cramped studio with thin walls and a radiator that clanked all night. Instead, the cab dropped them off in front of a building on the Upper East Side with a doorman who greeted Adrian by name. Evening, Mr. Murray. Wet night. Evening, James. They rode the elevator to the 18th floor. Emily tried not to stare at the marble floors and the mirror that showed her exactly how exhausted she looked. So, she said as Adrian unlocked the door, operations assistants are making bank these days? It's rent-controlled, Adrian said without looking at her. Got lucky. The apartment inside was nice, but not ostentatious. Hardwood floors, large windows overlooking the park, furniture that looked comfortable rather than expensive. A child's drawings covered the refrigerator. Toys were scattered across the living room in the organized chaos that came with having a kid. Papa! A little girl in princess pajamas came running from the hallway and launched herself at Adrian. He caught her easily, spinning her around. Hey, baby girl, you're supposed to be getting ready for bed. Maria said I could wait up until you got home. Sophie had dark curls in her father's gray eyes. She noticed Emily and went shy, half hiding behind Adrian's leg. Who's that? This is my friend Emily. She's going to help me with some work stuff. Hi, Sophie. Emily crouched down to the girl's level. I like your pajamas. They're Elsa. Sophie held out the fabric so Emily could see the pattern. She has ice powers. That's very cool. Literally. Sophie giggled. A woman in her 50s emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. I was about to call you, Adrian. You're usually home by 6. Sorry, Maria. Something came up. Adrian set Sophie down. Can you stay for another hour? I'll pay you extra. Of course. Maria glanced at Emily with polite curiosity but didn't ask questions. Sophie, say goodnight to your papa. But I'm not tired. Bed, monster. Adrian kissed the top of her head. I'll come check on you in a bit. Promise? Promise. Maria led Sophie back toward the bedrooms, Sophie protesting the whole way. Adrian waited until he heard the door close, then let out a long breath. She's cute, Emily said. She's my whole world. Adrian walked to the kitchen and started making coffee. Her mom died 3 years ago. Car accident. After that, it's just been us. I'm sorry. Thanks. He handed her a mug. You still think I'm a serial killer? Jury's out. Emily sat on the couch. So what's the emergency that required kidnapping a catering worker? Adrian set his laptop on the coffee table and opened it, the screen filled with lines of code and financial models that made Emily's head hurt just looking at them. That presentation today, Adrian said, typing rapidly. The automated trading algorithm they're launching tomorrow. It's going to fail. How do you know? Because the volatility data feeding the model is 3 months old. The algorithm thinks it's still August. It's going to make trades based on market conditions that don't exist anymore. Emily stared at the screen. I don't understand. Okay, imagine you're driving and you're following GPS directions. But the GPS is showing you a map from 3 months ago. Roads that existed then might not exist now. Construction, detours, accidents, none of that's on your map. You're going to crash. So this algorithm is going to crash. Worse, it's going to trade billions of dollars based on patterns that disappeared months ago. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, the company will have lost. Adrian ran a calculation. Conservative estimate? $900 million. Maybe more. Emily felt cold. That's insane. That's what happens when executives don't actually understand the systems they're approving. Adrian's voice was bitter. They just trust the numbers on the slide deck. Can't you tell someone? Your boss? Or, I tried. You saw how that went. Emily thought back to the meeting. Patterson's dismissive voice. Murray, we hired you to make the equipment work, not to interpret quantitative models you couldn't possibly understand. So, what are you going to do? Adrian looked at her, and for the first time, Emily saw genuine fear in his eyes. I'm going to fix it myself, tonight, before the market opens. How? The algorithm pulls data from a central database. If I can access the database and update the data source parameters, I can redirect it to current volatility metrics. But the database is encrypted, and I'll need to rewrite sections of the core trading logic to make sure it integrates properly. And you can do that? By yourself? Emily checked her phone. 11 hours? I have to. Why you? Why not let the company fail? And she stopped. Wait, you'd lose your job. It's not about the job. Adrian's hands were clenched. There are 3,000 people working for this company. Most of them have families, kids. If the company collapses, all of them lose everything. Their jobs, their insurance, their retirement funds. I can't let that happen. Emily studied his face. There was something else here, something he wasn't saying. The way he talked about the company, the way he knew its systems inside and out, the way he seemed to take personal responsibility for 3,000 strangers. Adrian, she said slowly. Who are you? I told you. Operations assistant. Bullshit, she pointed at the laptop. Operations assistants don't have access to encrypted trading databases. They don't understand algorithmic trading well enough to spot errors senior executives miss. They don't, she gestured around the apartment. They don't live in places like this, even with rent control. Adrian closed the laptop. Emily, I need you to trust me. Trust. I want to. But you're asking me to help you do something that sounds borderline illegal, and I don't even know who you really are. If I tell you, you'll look at me differently. Try me. Adrian stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, my name isn't Adrian Murray. It's Adrian Mercer. Emily's brain stuttered. Mercer? Like Mercer Global Investments. Like the owner of Mercer Global Investments, yes. The room tilted slightly. Emily gripped the arm of the couch. You're telling me you're a billionaire pretending to be your own employee? I'm telling you that 3 years ago, after my wife died, I realized I had no idea who actually cared about me versus who cared about my money. So I disappeared, created a false identity, started over. He turned to face her. The only people who know are my lawyers and my cousin Richard, who's acting as CEO while I figure out how to be a human being again. This is insane. I know. You're actually insane. Probably. Emily stood up, pacing. So this whole time while they were treating you like nothing, like someone whose opinion doesn't matter, you owned the entire company. Yes. And you just let them? I wanted to know what it felt like to be normal, to work without everyone constantly wanting something from me, to be just Adrian. A guy who picks up his daughter from school and watches Disney movies on Friday nights and doesn't have to perform for anyone. Emily stopped pacing. Why are you telling me this? Because I need help. Adrian's voice was quiet. I can fix the algorithm, but I need someone to help me access the building's secure network after hours. Someone who won't ask questions I can't answer. Someone who... He met her eyes. Someone who doesn't care about the money. How do you know I don't care about the money? Because you had the owner of a billion-dollar company standing right in front of you in that lobby, and all you did was call me out for looking at formulas wrong. Emily wanted to argue, wanted to say this was crazy, that she should leave, that she didn't want any part of whatever complicated billionaire drama he had going on. But she thought about her mom lying in a hospital bed in Brooklyn, about the medical bills stacking up, about the 2 jobs she worked that barely kept them afloat, and she thought about 3,000 people who had families and bills and problems too. What do you need me to do? She heard herself say. Adrian exhaled. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because Patterson's an asshole and I want to watch him realize he was wrong. That's fair. Adrian opened the laptop again and started pulling up schematics. The company's main servers are on the 45th floor. We'll need to access the physical database core, which means bypassing security, getting through 2 locked doors with biometric scanners, and praying the night IT staff doesn't decide to run diagnostics. When you say bypassing security, I own the building. I have override codes for everything. It's legal, technically. Technically. The hard part is the actual fix. Once we're in, I need to rewrite the data integration protocols while maintaining connection to all the live trading systems. If anything disconnects during the process, it'll trigger automatic alerts and we'll have security up there in minutes. Emily felt her heart rate pick up. So, no pressure. No pressure. Adrian glanced toward the hallway where Sophie was sleeping. I need to put her to bed first. Can you wait? Yeah. Adrian disappeared down the hall. Emily heard his voice, soft and gentle, reading a bedtime story. Something about a rabbit and a garden. She looked around the apartment again, seeing it differently now. The expensive but understated furniture, the art on the walls that was probably original. The view that cost more per month than most people made in a year. He'd given it all up, just to feel normal. Emily pulled out her phone and typed Adrian Mercer into Google. The results were immediate. Hundreds of articles. Photos of a younger Adrian in expensive suits, shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. His wedding announcement. His wife's obituary. Sarah Mercer, 29, died yesterday in a traffic collision on the FDR Drive. She is survived by her husband, Adrian, and daughter, Sophie. Emily closed the browser. 20 minutes later, Adrian emerged from Sophie's room carrying a stuffed rabbit. She won't sleep without this, but she also keeps kicking it onto the floor. He set it gently on the couch. You ready? As I'll ever be. Good. Adrian grabbed his laptop bag. One more thing. Yeah? If this goes wrong and we get caught, you don't know anything. You're just a catering worker who I asked to help carry equipment. I'll make sure nothing comes back on you. And if it goes right? Adrian smiled for the first time all night. Then tomorrow, Patterson's going to have a very bad day. They left the apartment and headed into the rain. The Mercer Global Investments building looked different at night. The lobby that had been full of rushed executives and clicking heels during the day now sat empty except for a single security guard reading something on his phone behind the desk. Adrian pushed through the revolving door with Emily close behind. The guard looked up, recognized Adrian, and went back to his phone without a word. That's it? Emily whispered as they crossed to the elevator bank. He's not going to ask what we're doing here at 9 p.m. Night maintenance crew comes through all the time. I've stayed late before. Adrian pressed the button for the 45th floor. As far as he's concerned, I'm just doing my job. The elevator hummed as it climbed. Emily watched the numbers tick upward, her stomach doing flips that had nothing to do with the motion. She'd committed to helping a billionaire break into his own company to rewrite a trading algorithm she barely understood. This was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. Probably stupid, definitely stupid. The doors opened onto darkness. Adrian stepped out first, using his phone's flashlight to navigate. The 45th floor was different from the executive levels below. No fancy artwork or floor-to-ceiling windows, just long hallways lined with server rooms and climate-controlled storage. The main database core is through here. Adrian led her to a door marked Authorized Personnel Only in red letters. He pulled a keycard from his wallet. Not the standard employee badge, Emily noticed, but something else entirely. It was black where everyone else's was blue. The lock beeped green. Inside, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. Rows of servers stretched into the darkness, their indicator lights blinking like a field of electronic fireflies. The hum of cooling fans filled the air with white noise. Jesus, Emily breathed. How much money is in here? It's not money, it's data. Market histories, trading patterns, client portfolios, proprietary algorithms. Adrian moved between the server racks with practiced ease. But yeah, if someone wanted to steal this, they could probably retire. Good thing we're not stealing it. Good thing. Adrian stopped at a workstation in the center of the room and set down his laptop bag. The monitor came to life when he touched the keyboard, throwing blue light across his face. His fingers flew across the keys, entering passwords and bypass codes that seemed to go on forever. How long will this take? Emily asked. Depends on how cooperative the system feels. Adrian pulled up lines of code that looked like alphabet soup to Emily. The data integration is the easy part. The hard part is making sure the algorithm accepts the new parameters without flagging the changes as suspicious. And if it does flag them, then the security system locks us out, sends alerts to the entire IT department, and we get to explain to my cousin why I was hacking my own company's servers at night. Fantastic. Emily wandered between the server racks while Adrian worked, trying to wrap her head around everything that had happened in the last 3 hours. This morning, she'd been a broke catering worker. Tonight, she was accomplishing some kind of corporate espionage with a secret billionaire. Her life had gotten weird. Emily, Adrian's voice cut through her thoughts. I need you to do something. She came back to the workstation. What? There's a server room 2 doors down on the left. I need you to physically access server bank 7 and restart the backup protocols. It'll look like a normal maintenance cycle, which will give me cover while I'm rewriting the core algorithm. You want me to restart a server? Just flip the switch to backup mode and flip it back. Takes 30 seconds. Adrian, I don't know anything about servers. Neither do most of the IT people here. He pulled a keycard from his pocket and handed it to her. Room's already unlocked. Server bank 7 will be clearly labeled. There's a switch on the front panel. Green light means active, yellow means backup. Just switch it to yellow, wait 10 seconds, switch it back to green. Emily took the key card. And if I break something? You won't. And if you do, I own it anyway. She started toward the door, then stopped. Why can't you do it? Because I need to be here monitoring the algorithm integration. If something goes wrong, I have about 15 seconds to abort before the whole system crashes. Adrian looked up from the screen. I trust you. Those 3 words hit harder than they should have. Emily left the main server room and counted doors. 1, 2. The 3rd door on the left was propped open with a doorstop. Inside, more servers hummed and blinked. She found server bank 7 near the back wall, exactly where Adrian said it would be. The switch was obvious, green light, active mode. Emily took a breath and flipped it to yellow. The green light died. The yellow one came to life. The server's hum changed pitch slightly. She counted to 10 in her head. Flipped it back to green. The server hummed back to normal. That's it? She said to the empty room. When she got back to the main room, Adrian was typing so fast his fingers blurred. Code scrolled down the screen in waterfalls of text. Numbers updated in real time in a window at the corner. Did it work? Emily asked. Perfectly. The backup cycle gave me a 30-second window where I could modify the core parameters without triggering alerts. Adrian didn't look away from the screen. Now I just need to rewrite the volatility integration and pray I don't typo anything. Emily pulled up a chair and watched him work. She didn't understand the code, but she understood focus. Adrian's entire body was bent toward the screen, his jaw tight, his eyes tracking every character. This wasn't the quiet operations assistant from the break room. This was someone who knew exactly what he was doing and exactly what was at stake. Minutes passed. Adrian's fingers never stopped moving. Then he swore under his breath. What? What's wrong? The algorithm's more corrupted than I thought. The volatility data isn't just outdated, it's been manually modified. Someone went into the system and changed the source parameters on purpose. Emily leaned forward. Why would someone do that? I don't know. Maybe incompetence. Maybe sabotage. Adrian pulled up a log file. The changes were made 6 weeks ago by someone with executive-level access. Can you tell who? Adrian scrolled through the access logs. His face went pale. Patterson. The guy from the meeting? The one who spilled coffee on me? He spilled coffee on you, but yes. Adrian sat back, running his hand through his hair. Why would Patterson modify the volatility data source? He's head of derivatives, not algorithmic trading. He shouldn't even have access to these systems. Maybe he made a mistake? You don't accidentally change database parameters. It takes deliberate effort and multiple confirmation screens. Adrian pulled up another window. And look at this. He accessed the system at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. Who works on trading algorithms at 2 in the morning on a weekend? Emily felt cold. Someone who doesn't want anyone to see what they're doing. Exactly. Adrian's hands were shaking slightly now. If I fix this and the algorithm works perfectly tomorrow, Patterson's going to know someone found his changes. He'll start asking questions. So what are you going to do? Adrian stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he started typing again. I'm going to fix it anyway. Whatever Patterson's doing, I'll deal with it later. Right now, I need to make sure this company doesn't implode at market open. He worked for another hour. Emily watched the clock tick toward 11, then 11:30. Her phone buzzed twice with texts from her roommate asking if she was still alive. She sent back quick responses, but kept her eyes on Adrian. At 11:47 p.m., Adrian stopped typing. Is it done? Emily asked. Almost. I've rewritten the volatility integration and updated the data sources. The algorithm will now pull from current market data instead of August numbers. He pulled up a simulation window. But I need to run a test to make sure everything integrates properly. How long does the test take? 3 minutes. Adrian hit enter. The screen filled with scrolling data, numbers updating faster than Emily could track. Graphs appeared, showing market projections and risk assessments, and a dozen other metrics she couldn't interpret. Adrian watched it all with the intensity of someone watching a bomb countdown. 2 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. The scrolling stopped. A single window appeared in the center of the screen. Simulation complete. Projected risk, nominal. Projected returns, 2.3% above baseline. Adrian let out a breath he'd been holding for 3 minutes. We did it, he said quietly. We did it? We did it. He turned to look at her, and his smile was the most genuine thing Emily had seen all night. The algorithm's fixed. When it goes live tomorrow morning, it'll trade based on current market conditions. No losses, no catastrophe, just normal, boring, profitable trading. Emily felt something loosen in her chest. So Patterson's plan, whatever it was, just failed. Not just failed. When the algorithm performs perfectly tomorrow, he's going to realize someone found his sabotage. And when he starts digging to figure out who... Adrian's smile turned sharper. He's going to find maintenance logs showing the system was accessed tonight by Adrian Murray, operations assistant. Will he come after you? Probably, but I'll worry about that tomorrow. Adrian started shutting down the workstation, clearing their access logs and replacing them with routine maintenance records. Right now, I just want to go home and check on Sophie. They left the server room the way they'd come, Adrian locking each door behind them with the black keycard. The elevator ride down felt faster than the ride up. The security guard in the lobby didn't even look up as they passed. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the street slick and reflecting the city lights. Emily's phone said it was 12:23 a.m. She'd been awake for 19 hours straight. I'll get you a cab, Adrian said, already raising his hand for one. I can take the subway. It's after midnight. I'm getting you a cab. A yellow taxi pulled up. Adrian opened the door for her, then pulled out his wallet. He handed her $500 in cash. Emily stared at the bills. This is way more than we agreed on. You just helped me save my company. It's worth more than $500. Adrian, please, let me do this. His voice was quiet. You have no idea how long it's been since someone helped me without wanting something in return. Emily took the money. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow the algorithm goes live, performs perfectly, and Patterson starts sweating. The day after that, I figure out what he was trying to do and why. Adrian stepped back from the cab. And maybe, if you're willing, I buy you coffee and we talk about literally anything other than trading algorithms and corporate sabotage. Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking if you want to get coffee. If that becomes a date, I won't complain. Emily felt herself smile. I work until 3 tomorrow. Coffee shop on 5th and 42nd at 4? I'll be there. She got into the cab. As it pulled away from the curb, she looked back through the rear window and saw Adrian standing on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching her leave. Her phone buzzed. Her roommate again. Are you alive? Emily typed back, alive. Kind of had a weird night. Tell you tomorrow. The cab dropped her off in front of her building in Brooklyn at 1:15 a.m. Emily climbed the 3 flights to her apartment, unlocked the door as quietly as she could, and found her roommate Jessica asleep on the couch with the TV still on. Emily turned off the TV, threw a blanket over Jessica, and collapsed into her own bed without bothering to change out of her catering uniform. Her last thought before sleep took her was that tomorrow she had coffee with a billionaire who thought she was worth talking to. Then she was out. The alarm went off at 6:30 a.m. Emily groaned, slapped it silent, and seriously considered just not getting up. Her body felt like it had been hit by a truck. Every muscle ached, her eyes burned. Then she remembered her mom's morning medication schedule and dragged herself out of bed. Jessica was already up, making coffee in the kitchen. "So, want to explain why you texted me that a guy named Adrian might be a serial killer, then didn't come home until after 1 in the morning?" Emily poured herself coffee and gave Jessica the abbreviated version. Left out the part about billions of dollars and secret identities. Just said she'd helped a coworker fix a computer problem and lost track of time. Jessica didn't look convinced. "This is the guy you're getting coffee with today?" "Maybe." Emily: "What? Please tell me you're not falling for some random guy from work who sweet-talked you into staying late with him." "It's not like that. It's always like that." Jessica grabbed her nursing scrubs from the back of a chair. "Just be careful, okay? You've got enough on your plate without adding some complicated work romance." "It's coffee, Jess, not a marriage proposal." Famous last words. Jessica left for her shift at the hospital. Emily showered, changed, and caught the subway to the care facility where her mom was staying during her treatment cycle. Margaret Carter was sitting up in bed when Emily arrived, reading a mystery novel with a bookmark 3/4 through. She'd lost weight since starting chemotherapy, and her hair was growing back in gray patches, but her eyes were still sharp. "You look terrible," Margaret said by way of greeting. "Good morning to you too, Mom." "I'm serious. When's the last time you slept a full night?" "I sleep fine." "Liar." Margaret set down her book. "You're working yourself to death trying to pay for treatments I'm not even sure are working." "Don't talk like that." "Emily, I'm tired. You're tired. Maybe it's time we had a real conversation about—" "No." Emily sat on the edge of the bed. "We're not having that conversation. You're getting better. The doctor said the latest scans showed improvement." "The doctors say a lot of things." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, Brooklyn woke up under gray November skies. "I met someone," Emily said finally. Margaret's eyebrows went up. "Met someone? It's not a big deal. We're just getting coffee later." "What's his name?" "Adrian. He works at one of the buildings where I cater." Emily picked at a thread on the blanket. "He's nice. Smart. Has a daughter." "Single father?" "Widower." Margaret nodded slowly. "And he knows about me? About the treatments?" "I mentioned it." "And he didn't run?" "Not yet." "Then he might be worth the coffee." Margaret squeezed Emily's hand. "Just promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you'll let yourself be happy. Even if it's just for an afternoon. Even if it scares you." Margaret's eyes were wet now. "You spend so much time taking care of me, taking care of everyone else. When was the last time someone took care of you?" Emily's throat felt tight. "I don't need anyone to take care of me." "Everyone needs someone, baby." Emily stayed until visiting hours ended at 9, then caught the subway back to Manhattan for her morning shift at a different catering company. This one was a corporate breakfast event at a law firm in Midtown. She served bagels and coffee to lawyers who didn't look at her and tried not to think about the fact that in 7 hours she had coffee with Adrian. It wasn't a date. It was just coffee. With a billionaire who trusted her with his secrets. No pressure. At 3:47 p.m., Emily changed out of her catering uniform in the law firm's bathroom, put on the one nice sweater she owned, and headed for Fifth Avenue. The coffee shop was one of those trendy places with exposed brick and Edison bulbs, and a menu that charged $7 for a latte. Emily almost turned around and left. This was stupid. She didn't belong here. Adrian probably wouldn't even show up. Then she saw him sitting at a corner table near the window, and her heart did something complicated. He looked different out of his work clothes, more relaxed. He was wearing jeans and a dark sweater, reading something on his phone. When he saw her, his face lit up. "You came," he said, standing. "You sound surprised." "I thought you might change your mind, decide I was too weird." "Oh, you're definitely weird." Emily sat down across from him. "But I've had weirder nights." Adrian laughed. It was a good sound. "Coffee? Food? They have really good sandwiches here." "Just coffee. I can't stay long. I have another shift at 6. He ordered for both of them. When the drinks came, something complicated with foam art that Emily immediately felt guilty about drinking, Adrian wrapped his hands around his cup and looked at her like he was trying to figure out where to start. So, he said finally, last night was insane. That's one word for it. The algorithm went live this morning at 4 a.m., performed exactly as projected. No errors, no losses, no catastrophic implosion of the global financial system. Congratulations on not destroying the economy. Thanks. It's a low bar, but I cleared it. Adrian's smile faded slightly. Patterson requested a meeting with Richard this afternoon, demanded to know if anyone had accessed the trading systems overnight. Emily's stomach dropped. What did Richard say? That routine maintenance was performed by authorized personnel, which is technically true. I am authorized personnel. I just happen to own the company. Adrian took a sip of coffee. Patterson didn't push it, but he's suspicious. He knows something's off. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. If I confront him officially, I have to reveal who I am. If I don't, he might try sabotaging something else. Adrian rubbed his eyes. I didn't think this through. I just wanted to stop the algorithm from failing, didn't consider the aftermath. Emily watched him. In the daylight, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight he carried. He told her yesterday that being Adrian Murray let him feel normal. But looking at him now, she wondered if he'd ever actually felt normal at all. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why did you really walk away from being yourself? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, people rushed past on their way to somewhere important. Sarah and I met in college, he said finally. I was broke back then. Like, actually broke, not billionaire pretending to be broke. I had $300 to my name and student loans I couldn't pay. She was studying architecture. We lived in this terrible apartment with a radiator that only worked on Tuesdays. Emily smiled despite herself. We were happy, Adrian continued, really happy. Then my investment firm took off, and suddenly we had money, real money. And everything changed. People treated me differently. Sarah's friends started calling her lucky. Lucky. Like she'd won a lottery instead of choosing to love me when I had nothing. His voice went rough. The night she died, we'd just left a charity gala. Some event I didn't want to attend. But I had to because people expected Adrian Mercer to show up and smile and write checks. Sarah was driving because I'd had 2 glasses of wine. The cab that hit us ran a red light. Adrian, I spent the next year trying to be the person everyone expected. The grieving widower who still showed up to meetings, who still made smart investments, who still played the game. He looked at her. And then one day I woke up and realized I had no idea who I was anymore. Without Sarah, without the pressure, without everyone constantly watching me. So I disappeared. Created Adrian Murray. Got a job where nobody knew my name or my net worth or my tragedy. And Sophie? Emily asked quietly. Sophie's the only real thing I have left. When I'm with her, I'm just dad. Not a billionaire, not a widower, just the guy who makes her pancakes and reads her stories and teaches her that people matter more than money. Adrian's hands tightened around his cup. I can't let her grow up in the world I grew up in, where everyone wants something, where love has a price tag. Emily understood then, not just the hiding, but the fear underneath it, the terror that his daughter would inherit his loneliness. For what it's worth, she said, you're doing a good job. With Sophie. She seems happy. She is, most days. Adrian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Though she keeps asking me when she gets a new mommy. Apparently all her friends at school have 2 parents, and she wants to know why she only has 1. What do you tell her? That sometimes families look different, that we don't need to be like everyone else to be complete. He paused. But honestly, I think she's lonely, and I don't know how to fix that. They sat in silence, drinking coffee that had gone lukewarm. Around them, the cafe filled with the after-work crowd. People on laptops, couples holding hands, students studying for exams, normal people living normal lives. I should go, Emily said, checking her phone. I'm going to be late for my shift. Right, of course. Adrian stood when she did. Can I see you again? I mean, not for coffee, maybe dinner, or, I don't know, whatever you'd want to do. Emily looked at him, really looked at him, saw the loneliness and the hope and the fear all tangled together. She should say no. She had enough complications in her life without adding a secret billionaire and his daughter and whatever corporate drama was brewing with Patterson. Yes, she heard herself say. Adrian's face broke into a genuine smile. Yeah? Yeah. But you're buying because I definitely can't afford anywhere you'd want to eat. Deal. Emily left the coffee shop and caught the subway to her evening shift. Her phone buzzed halfway there. A text from an unknown number. Thank you for last night and for today. I forgot what it felt like to talk to someone who just listens. Adrian. She saved the number and typed back, You're welcome. Try not to save the world again before dinner. His response came immediately. No promises. Emily smiled at her phone like an idiot. Jessica was going to have a field day with this. The evening shift was at a private event in a gallery in Chelsea. Emily served champagne to people who looked at the art on the walls and pretended to understand it. She was exhausted, running on fumes and caffeine, but she couldn't stop thinking about Adrian's face when he talked about Sophie, about being just dad, about trying to protect his daughter from a world that had already taken so much from him. At 9:30 p.m., her supervisor dismissed her early. The event was winding down, and they had enough staff to handle cleanup. Emily took the subway back to Brooklyn, climbed the stairs to her apartment, and found Jessica waiting up with wine and questions. Spill, Jessica demanded, pouring 2 glasses. And don't leave anything out, Jessica. Emily told her everything. Well, almost everything. She left out the part about the billions and the secret identity. Just said Adrian was a single dad who worked in finance and seemed genuinely interested in her. Jessica listened, her expression cycling through skepticism, concern, and reluctant approval. Okay, she said when Emily finished. He sounds either perfect or too good to be true. Definitely too good to be true. But you're going to see him again anyway. Apparently. Emily. Jessica set down her wine glass. I love you and I want you to be happy. But please, please be careful. You have a tendency to throw yourself into taking care of other people and forgetting to protect yourself. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you just spent last night helping some guy you barely know fix a work problem instead of sleeping. And now you're agreeing to dinner with him even though you're already working 2 jobs and taking care of your mom. It's just dinner, Jess. It's never just dinner. But Emily was already thinking about Adrian's smile, about Sophie asking for a new mommy, about the way he'd looked at her in the server room like she was the only person who could help him. She was in trouble. She knew it, and she didn't care. The dinner happened 3 days later at a small Italian place in the West Village that didn't look like much from the outside. Emily almost walked past it twice before Adrian texted her the correct address. Inside, the lighting was warm and low, and the smell of garlic and fresh bread made her stomach growl loud enough that the hostess smiled. Adrian was already there, sitting at a corner table. He stood when he saw her, and Emily noticed he looked nervous. Actually nervous. His hand went to his hair twice before he caught himself. Hi, he said. Hi. Emily slid into the seat across from him. This place is nice. It's Sarah's favorite, was her favorite. Adrian winced. Sorry, I didn't mean to make this weird right away. It's okay. You can talk about her. Most people get uncomfortable when I do. I'm not most people. The waiter came by with menus and water. Adrian ordered wine without looking at the list, something Italian that Emily had never heard of. When the waiter left, Adrian leaned back in his chair and studied her face. How's your mom doing? He asked. The question caught Emily off guard. Most people asked once out of politeness and never brought it up again. She's okay, tired. The treatments make her sick, but the doctors say she's responding well. That's good. Yeah. Emily opened her menu, mostly to have something to look at besides Adrian's eyes. How's Sophie? Convinced that her stuffed rabbit is real and just pretending to be a toy. She's been leaving carrots out for him at night. Adrian smiled. This morning I found her crying because Mr. Carrots didn't eat any of them. I had to sneak into her room after she fell asleep and nibble the carrots to make them look eaten. Emily laughed. That's actually adorable. It's exhausting, but yeah, also adorable. Adrian's expression shifted. She's been asking about you, actually. About me? She saw your name on my phone when you texted. Wanted to know who Emily was and why I was smiling at my phone like an idiot. What did you tell her? That you're a friend. She asked if you were a girlfriend. I said no. She looked disappointed. The waiter returned with wine. Emily took a sip and felt it burn warm down her throat. It tasted expensive. Everything here probably cost more than she made in a week. So, Adrian said, setting down his glass. I need to tell you something about Patterson. Emily's stomach tightened. What happened? He went to Richard yesterday, demanded a full audit of the trading systems, said he had reason to believe someone tampered with the volatility algorithm. Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. Richard tried to brush him off, but Patterson's threatening to go to the board. Can he do that? He's a senior executive. He can do whatever he wants. Adrian broke off a piece of bread and didn't eat it. The problem is, if they run an audit, they'll find my access logs. Even with the maintenance cover story, someone's going to ask questions, and if they dig deep enough, they'll figure out who you really are. Yeah. Emily watched him tear the bread into smaller and smaller pieces. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to just come clean. Tell Richard to announce that I'm back, resume my actual position, and deal with Patterson directly. Adrian's jaw clenched. But the other part of me knows that the second I do that, everything changes. I stop being Sophie's dad who works a normal job and picks her up from school. I become the billionaire CEO again. And Sophie becomes the billionaire's daughter. She's already the billionaire's daughter. But she doesn't know what that means yet. She thinks we're just regular people. She has play dates with kids whose parents are teachers and nurses and accountants. Nobody treats her differently because of my money. Adrian looked up and his eyes were raw. The moment everyone knows who I am, that ends. She becomes a target. For kidnapping, for manipulation, for people who want to use her to get to me. I've kept her safe for 3 years by being nobody. I don't know if I can give that up. The waiter appeared to take their order. Emily chose something at random from the menu. Adrian did the same. When they were alone again, Emily reached across the table and put her hand over his. Adrian, you can't hide forever. I know. And Patterson's not going to stop. Whatever he was trying to do with that algorithm, he knows someone interfered. He's going to keep pushing until he gets answers. I know that too. Adrian's hand turned under hers, his fingers lacing through hers. I just wish I had more time to figure out how to protect Sophie, to prepare for everything that's about to change. Emily squeezed his hand. So, use the time you have. Figure out what Patterson was really doing. Get ahead of it. Then when you do reveal yourself, you're not just defending against his accusations. You're exposing whatever he was trying to hide. Adrian stared at her. That's actually smart. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not. I'm just... He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. You're really good at this, seeing the solution when I'm too close to the problem. I waitress and serve coffee for a living. My entire job is reading people and figuring out what they need before they ask for it. It's more than that. You cut through the noise and see what actually matters. Adrian's thumb traced circles on her palm. Sarah used to do that too. I'd be spiraling about some market trend or investment decision, and she'd just look at me and ask one question that made everything clear. Emily felt something twist in her chest. I'm not trying to replace her. I know. And I'm not trying to replace her with you. Adrian's voice went soft. But maybe that's okay. Maybe different people can matter in different ways. Maybe I'm allowed to feel something for someone new without it erasing what I had before. The food arrived. They ate slowly, talking about everything except Patterson and algorithms and corporate sabotage. Adrian told her about Sophie's school, about the parent-teacher conference where he learned his daughter had been telling everyone her dad was a superhero who fought bad guys with math. Emily told him about her mom's stubbornness, about how Margaret refused to let the cancer define her and kept insisting she'd beat it through sheer force of will. She sounds like you, Adrian said. She's tougher than me. I doubt that. After dinner, Adrian walked her to the subway. The November air had a bite to it now, cold enough that Emily could see her breath. She should have brought a heavier jacket. Adrian noticed her shivering and shrugged off his coat. Here, I'm fine. Emily, you're turning blue. Take the coat. She took it. It smelled like him, something clean and expensive that she couldn't name. They walked in comfortable silence for a block before Adrian spoke again. Can I ask you something that might be too personal? You can ask. I might not answer. Why are you working 3 jobs? I know your mom's treatments are expensive, but there must be financial assistance programs, insurance. She doesn't qualify for most of them. Makes too much from her pension to get aid, but not enough to actually cover the costs. Emily kicked at a piece of trash on the sidewalk. And her insurance has a lifetime cap. We hit it 6 months ago, so now it's all out of pocket. How much do you need? Emily stopped walking. Adrian, no. I'm just asking. I know what you're asking, and the answer is no. I'm not taking money from you. Why not? I have more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Your mom needs treatments. It's simple math. It's not simple. It's complicated and messy, and I don't want to be the charity case you throw money at to feel better about yourself. Emily's voice came out harsher than she intended. Adrian flinched. That's not what this is. Isn't it? Rich guy meets struggling girl, wants to play savior? Emily, I need to go. She started walking again, faster now. Adrian caught up to her. Wait, please. I'm sorry. You're right. That was condescending. Yeah, it was. But can you understand where I'm coming from? I spend every day pretending to be someone I'm not because I'm terrified of people wanting my money. And then I meet you, someone who actually needs help, someone I actually want to help, and you won't let me because of the same reason everyone else does, because of the money. Emily stopped at the subway entrance. People rushed past them, heading underground. It's not the same thing. How is it different? Because those people want something from you. I don't want anything except... She cut herself off. Except what? Except to know that this is real. That you're not just some bored billionaire who's going to lose interest the moment things get complicated. That I'm not just a distraction from your actual life. Emily wrapped his coat tighter around herself. My mom's dying, Adrian. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but eventually. And when she does, I'm going to fall apart. And I need to know that if we're doing this, if we're actually doing this, you're not going to run when it gets hard. Adrian's face went very still. Then he stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. I watched my wife die in a hospital bed while our daughter slept in the chair next to me. I know what hard looks like, and I'm still here. Emily's eyes burned. I'm scared. Me too. This is a terrible idea. Probably the worst I've ever had. You're still wearing my coat. You gave it to me. Adrian smiled. Then he kissed her, soft and careful, like he was afraid she might break. Emily kissed him back, and it felt like jumping off a cliff with no idea if there was water at the bottom. When they pulled apart, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. For the record, I'm not going anywhere, even when it gets hard. Especially when it gets hard. Okay? Okay? Okay. Emily stepped back. But I'm still not taking your money. What if I hired you? To do what? I don't know yet. I'll think of something. Adrian was smiling now, that genuine smile that made him look younger. Go home. Get some sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. Emily went down into the subway, still wearing his coat. She didn't give it back. He didn't ask for it. The next morning, Adrian was waiting outside the Mercer Global Investments building when she arrived for her catering shift. He looked like he hadn't slept, his tie crooked and his hair messy. What are you doing here? Emily asked, glancing around to make sure none of the other catering staff were watching. I need your help again. Adrian, I went through Patterson's access logs last night. He's been modifying trading algorithms for the past 6 months, not just volatility data. Everything. Risk assessments, hedge positions, derivative structures. Adrian's voice was low and urgent. And every modification makes the company more vulnerable to a specific type of market event. What kind of event? A crash. A big one. If the market drops more than 12% in a single day, all of Patterson's modifications trigger simultaneously. The company would be forced to liquidate positions at massive losses. We'd be insolvent within hours. Emily felt cold. He's trying to destroy the company or profit from it. If he's shorting our stock while setting us up to fail, he could make hundreds of millions when we collapse. Adrian pulled out his phone and showed her a graph that meant nothing to Emily. I need to get into his office, his physical office. There's paperwork, communications, evidence that won't be in the digital system. Break into an executive's office. That's your plan. I can't go to Richard with just suspicions. I need proof. Adrian looked at her with those gray eyes that had already gotten her into too much trouble. Patterson's at an off-site meeting until 3. His office will be empty. If I can get in there, we can get in there. Emily, you don't have to... Yes, I do. Because you're about to do something stupid and reckless, and someone needs to make sure you don't get caught. She checked her watch. I'm serving breakfast on the 42nd floor until 11. Patterson's office is on 44. Give me until noon. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue. Then he just nodded. Thank you. Stop thanking me and start figuring out how we're getting past his secretary. At 11:47, Emily changed out of her catering uniform in the bathroom and put on the spare blouse she'd brought. She looked almost professional. Almost. She met Adrian on the 44th floor. He was carrying a tablet and wearing his operations assistant face, the one that made people's eyes slide right past him. Patterson's secretary, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane, looked up when they approached. "Can I help you?" "IT sent us to check the network connections in Mr. Patterson's office," Adrian said smoothly. "There's been reports of slow connectivity on this floor." "I wasn't informed about any maintenance." "It's in the system. Should have gotten an automated email this morning." Adrian showed her the tablet. Emily had no idea if there was actually anything on the screen, but Diane glanced at it and seemed satisfied. "Fine, but make it quick. He'll be back by 3. Adrian unlocked the office door with his black key card. They stepped inside and closed the door behind them. Patterson's office was exactly what Emily expected. Expensive desk, leather chairs, wall of diplomas and awards, window view that probably cost more per square foot than her entire apartment. Everything perfectly arranged to project success and power. Adrian went straight to the desk and started opening drawers. Look for anything unusual, offshore account statements, communications with outside firms, anything that doesn't look like normal business. Emily started with the filing cabinet. Most of it was boring corporate stuff, performance reviews and budget reports, and memos about things she didn't understand. Then she found a folder marked External Consultants, tucked behind the quarterly earnings reports. Adrian. He came over. Inside the folder were contracts with a firm called Vanguard Strategic Partners. Consulting fees totaling $8 million over 6 months. Payments made through a Cayman Islands account. "What does Vanguard Strategic Partners do?" Emily asked. Adrian was already typing the name into his phone. His face went pale. "They're a hedge fund, specializing in short positions and market volatility plays." "In English?" "They bet against companies and profit when those companies fail." Adrian took photos of every page in the folder. Patterson's been paying them millions, and based on these dates, the payment started exactly when he began modifying the trading algorithms. So he's working with them. More than that, look at this. Adrian pointed to a clause in one of the contracts. Vanguard gets 20% of Patterson's personal profits from any trades made in connection with their consulting services. This isn't consulting. This is a partnership. He's setting up the company to fail, so he and Vanguard can short our stock and make a fortune. That's illegal, right? Extremely. Securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, probably a dozen other charges. Adrian kept taking photos. "This is enough. I can take this to Richard, to the board, to the SEC if I have to. Patterson's done." A sound outside the office made them both freeze. Voices. Getting closer. "Told you we wouldn't need the full afternoon. The presentation took 20 minutes. Patterson's voice. Unmistakable. Adrian looked at Emily, his eyes wide. They were trapped. Patterson's office had one door, and he was about to walk through it. Emily's mind raced. The window didn't open. There was no other exit, nowhere to hide except... "The closet," she whispered. They dove into the narrow coat closet in the corner of the office. Adrian pulled the door shut just as the main office door opened. Through the crack, Emily could see Patterson walk in, followed by 2 men in expensive suits. "Gentlemen, please have a seat." Patterson moved to his desk. "I know this seems risky, but I assure you the company is perfectly positioned for the upcoming market correction." "And you're certain the corrections will happen when you say?" One of the men sounded skeptical. "The economic indicators all point to a significant downturn within the next 3 weeks. When it hits, Mercer Global's modified risk protocols will force automatic liquidation across all major positions. The stock price will crater, and our short positions will pay out exactly as projected." Emily felt Adrian tense beside her. In the tiny closet, they were pressed together, his chest against her back, his hand gripping hers so tight it hurt. "What about the audit Patterson requested?" the second man asked. "If the board discovers the algorithm modifications, they won't. I've made sure of that." Patterson sounded confident. "And even if someone does find the modifications, they'll look like optimization attempts. Nothing explicitly illegal. Just aggressive risk management that happened to make the company more vulnerable." "And Adrian Mercer? The real owner?" Emily felt Adrian stop breathing. Still hiding somewhere in Europe, as far as anyone knows. Richard's doing a fine job running the company into the ground without any help from me. By the time Mercer figures out what's happening, if he ever does, we'll have already made our money and moved on. The meeting continued for another 10 minutes. Emily's legs were cramping. Sweat ran down her back despite the air conditioning. Adrian hadn't moved, hadn't breathed normally since Patterson mentioned his name. Finally, the men left. Patterson made a phone call about dinner reservations, then walked out, leaving his office empty. Adrian and Emily stayed in the closet for a full minute before Adrian carefully pushed the door open. They stepped out into the office, and Emily saw that Adrian was shaking. "He thinks I'm in Europe," Adrian said quietly. "He thinks I abandoned the company. Adrian, he's betting that I won't come back, that I don't care enough to stop him." Adrian's voice was hollow. "And until 5 days ago, he would have been right." Emily grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "But he's wrong. You're here. You stopped the algorithm. You found the evidence. And now you're going to stop him. By revealing who I am. By giving up everything I've been protecting. By saving 3,000 people's jobs. By being the person Sophie thinks you are. The superhero who fights bad guys with math." Adrian closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder. Determination. "Okay," he said. "Let's end this." They left Patterson's office and took the elevator down to Richard's floor. Adrian walked past Richard's secretary without stopping, ignoring her protests, and pushed open the door to the CEO's office. Richard looked up from his desk, startled. "Adrian, what are you—" "We need to talk. Now. Close the door." Richard's secretary hovered in the doorway. Richard waved her away and closed the door himself. "What's going on? You look terrible." "Patterson's trying to destroy the company. I have proof." Adrian pulled out his phone and started showing Richard the photos. "He's been sabotaging our trading algorithms for 6 months, working with a hedge fund to short our stock. When the market crashes, we'll be forced to liquidate everything at massive losses, and Patterson will make hundreds of millions from our collapse." Richard's face went white as he scrolled through the photos. "This can't be real." "It's real. I found these in his office 20 minutes ago. I have him on record discussing the whole scheme with his partners." "How did you—" Richard stopped. "You broke into his office." "I accessed company property that I legally own. Different thing." Adrian sat down across from Richard. "We need to call an emergency board meeting. Tonight. Get Patterson removed and start unwinding his modifications before the market turns. Adrian, if we do this, everyone will know you're back. The press will find out within hours. Your privacy, Sophie's safety." "I know," Adrian's voice was steady. "But I can't let him destroy everything we built. Everyone who works here, who depends on this company, they matter more than my comfort." Richard studied his cousin's face. "You're sure about this?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "Okay." Richard picked up his phone. "I'll start making calls. Board meeting at 8 tonight. We'll need legal present, probably the SEC. And Emily stays." Richard blinked. "Who?" Adrian gestured to where Emily stood by the door, trying to be invisible. "Emily Carter. She helped me find the evidence. She's part of this." "Adrian, she's not an employee. She can't be in a board meeting." "Then hire her. Right now. Put her on the payroll as a consultant." "A consultant for what?" "I don't care. Make something up. She stays." Adrian's tone left no room for argument. Richard looked at Emily, then back at Adrian. A slow smile crossed his face. "You're serious about her?" "Richard? Fine. Ms. Carter, congratulations on your new position as special consultant to the CEO's office. You start immediately at a salary of, let's say, $200,000 a year." Emily choked. "I'm sorry, what? Too low?" $250 then." "Richard, stop messing with her," Adrian said, but he was almost smiling. "I'm not messing with anyone. If she's sitting in on a board meeting where we're discussing securities fraud, she needs to be compensated appropriately." Richard extended his hand to Emily. "Welcome to Mercer Global Investments, Ms. Carter. Try not to let my cousin's dramatics scare you off." Emily shook his hand, her head spinning. "I'll do my best." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Richard's assistant drew up emergency employment contracts. Legal teams assembled. Board members were notified of the mandatory 8 p.m. meeting. And somewhere in the building, Patterson went about his day with no idea his entire scheme was about to implode. At 7:30, Adrian found Emily in an empty conference room staring out at the city lights. "You okay?" he asked. "I just got hired for $250,000 to be a consultant for something I don't understand. I'm the opposite of okay." Emily turned to face him. "What happens after tonight?" "Patterson gets fired, probably arrested. The board scrambles to fix his sabotage, and I stop being Adrian Murray." He moved closer. "The press will tear into me. They'll call me reckless for hiding. They'll question my judgment, and they'll definitely find out about you." "What will they say about me?" "Probably that you're a gold digger who seduced me for money. The tabloids won't care about the truth." "Great. Looking forward to that." "You can still walk away. I'll make sure you get the salary for the full year, even if you leave tonight. No one would blame you." Emily thought about her mom, about Jessica's warnings, about every reasonable reason she should leave right now. Then she thought about Adrian in the closet, shaking with rage at Patterson's betrayal, about Sophie leaving carrots for her stuffed rabbit, about the way Adrian looked at her like she mattered. "I'm staying," she said. "Why?" "Because someone needs to make sure you don't do anything stupid. I think that ship has sailed." "Then I guess I'm sailing with you." Adrian kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of all the fear and hope tangled up inside both of them. When they pulled apart, Emily straightened his tie. "Come on, let's go save your company." The board meeting started at exactly 8 p.m. Emily had never been in a boardroom before. She'd seen them in movies, of course, all glass walls and leather chairs and people in suits deciding the fates of thousands with a casual vote. But sitting in one was different. The air felt heavier. The silence before the meeting started pressed against her chest like a weight. 12 board members sat around the massive table. Emily recognized a few faces from financial news shows her mom sometimes watched. These were serious people, rich people, people who belonged here. Emily did not belong here. She sat in a chair against the wall, trying to be invisible. Adrian sat at the table next to Richard, his face carefully blank. He'd changed into a suit she'd never seen him wear, and suddenly he looked different. Not like the guy who read bedtime stories to his daughter, like someone who owned buildings and moved markets. The door opened and Patterson walked in. He saw Adrian and stopped mid-step. His eyes narrowed. "Murray, why is operations staff in a board meeting?" "Sit down, Patterson," Richard said quietly. "I don't understand what's—" "Sit. Down." Patterson sat. His eyes darted around the room, landing on Emily, then back to Adrian. Something flickered across his face. Recognition? Fear? Emily couldn't tell. Richard stood. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. We have a serious matter to address tonight. Before we begin, I need to make an announcement that will clarify some confusion." He looked at Adrian. "The floor is yours." Adrian stood slowly, every eye in the room fixed on him. "Most of you don't know who I am," Adrian said. His voice was steady, but Emily could see his hands clenched at his sides. "For the past 3 years, I've been working in this building under the name Adrian Murray, operations assistant. The quiet guy who fixed your computers and set up your presentations." He paused. "But that's not who I am. My name is Adrian Mercer. I'm the founder and majority owner of this company." The room exploded. 6 people started talking at once. Patterson's face went white, then red. A woman at the far end of the table actually stood up, pointing at Adrian like he'd just confessed to murder. "This is insane!" That was Gerald Morrison, the board chairman. "Adrian Mercer has been in Europe for 3 years. We have records of—" "You have records of what my lawyers wanted you to have." Adrian's voice cut through the noise. "I created a false identity after my wife died because I needed to step away. To be a father without the pressure of being Adrian Mercer. Richard has been acting as CEO under my direction, managing the company while I maintained oversight from behind the scenes." "You've been spying on us?" Jennifer Torres looked furious. "Pretending to be an employee while secretly controlling everything? I've been protecting my investment and the people who work here. Which brings me to why I'm revealing myself now." Adrian pulled out his phone and connected it to the presentation screen. Patterson's contracts with Vanguard Strategic Partners filled the wall. "Because one of you has been actively sabotaging this company for the past 6 months." Every head turned toward Patterson. "That's ridiculous," Patterson said, but his voice shook. "Those are legitimate consulting contracts. Vanguard Strategic Partners is a hedge fund specializing in short positions." Adrian continued. You've paid them $8 million while simultaneously modifying our trading algorithms to make the company vulnerable to market crashes. When the market drops, which your partners are betting will happen in the next 3 weeks, our systems will force us to liquidate positions at massive losses. The stock price will collapse, and you and Vanguard will profit from shorting our stock. Adrian clicked to the next slide. The conversation they'd recorded through the closet door played through the room's speakers. Patterson's voice, clear and confident, discussing the scheme with his partners. The stock price will crater, and our short positions will pay out exactly as projected. Patterson stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You broke into my office. That recording is illegal. I accessed property that I own with authorization that I provided to myself. Nothing illegal about it. Adrian's smile was sharp. What is illegal is securities fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty? Conspiracy to commit fraud? Should I continue? Morrison looked like he might be sick. Patterson, tell me this isn't real. Patterson's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I was trying to protect my investments. The company's risk management has been deteriorating under Richard's leadership. I was simply, you were setting us up to fail so you could profit from our destruction, Richard said flatly. Adrian, what's the damage assessment? If Patterson's modifications had remained in place during a market correction, we would have lost approximately $900 million in forced liquidations. The stock price would have dropped 60 to 70%. The company would likely have been insolvent within a week. Adrian clicked to another slide showing the algorithm comparisons. I've already corrected the volatility data integration. The other modifications will take 48 hours to fully unwind. Who else knows about this? Torres asked. Right now? Just the people in this room. Adrian looked at each board member in turn. Patterson's partners believe the plan is still active, which gives us a choice. We can go public immediately, expose the fraud, and let the SEC handle prosecution. Or we can be strategic about it. Strategic how? Morrison's voice was careful. We announce my return as CEO tomorrow morning. Position it as a planned transition that's been in the works for months. Richard stays on as COO. We quietly unwind Patterson's modifications without announcing why. And we let Patterson's partners believe their scheme is still active while we build a bulletproof case against all of them. You want to use Patterson as bait, Torres said. I want to make sure we catch everyone involved. If we arrest Patterson now, Vanguard will cover their tracks and will never prove the full extent of the conspiracy. Morrison looked at Patterson with disgust. And what happens to him in the meantime? He's fired, effective immediately. Escorted from the building tonight. All access revoked. We announce it as a routine personnel change. Adrian's voice went cold. And Patterson, if you try to warn your partners or move against this company in any way, I will personally ensure you spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Are we clear? Patterson said nothing. His face had gone gray. I said, are we clear? Yes. The word barely made it out of Patterson's mouth. Morrison looked around the table. All in favor of terminating Patterson's employment immediately? 12 hands went up. Emily's hand stayed in her lap, but she felt a fierce satisfaction watching Patterson's world collapse. Security will escort you out, Richard told Patterson. You have 15 minutes to collect personal items from your office. Nothing else. We'll be watching. Patterson stood on shaking legs. He looked at Adrian with something that might have been hatred or fear or both. You won't get away with this. I already have. Security guards appeared at the door like they'd been waiting. They probably had been. Patterson left between them, his shoulders hunched, looking 20 years older than when he'd walked in. When the door closed behind him, Morrison turned to Adrian. Now, would you like to explain why you've been lying to this board for 3 years? What followed was the most brutal hour of Adrian's life. The board tore into him with questions that felt like attacks. Why had he hidden? Why hadn't he trusted them? How could they possibly trust him now? What kind of leader abandons his company? Adrian took it all, answered every question as honestly as he could. And when Morrison asked why he'd come back now, Adrian told the truth. Because someone I trust told me I was being a coward, that I was choosing my comfort over the people depending on me. He glanced at Emily. And she was right. Morrison followed his gaze. And who is Ms. Carter exactly? A consultant Richard just hired. A consultant who was somehow involved in uncovering Patterson's fraud despite being hired 6 hours ago? She helped me access Patterson's office, Adrian said. I trust her. You trust a woman you've known for less than a week? Yes. Why? Because when I told her who I was, she didn't ask for anything. She just asked if I was sure about what I was doing. Adrian's voice was quiet. Do you know how rare that is? To meet someone who wants nothing from you except for you to be better than you are? The room went silent. Torres was looking at Emily with an expression Emily couldn't read. Morrison just looked tired. We'll need to schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning, Morrison said finally. 9 a.m. We announce your return, position it as positive, emphasize continuity and stability. Agreed. And Ms. Carter will not be mentioned. The press doesn't need to know about her involvement in any of this. Also agreed. Morrison stood. Welcome back, Mr. Mercer. Try not to disappear again. The board members filed out, most of them avoiding eye contact with Adrian. When the room was empty, except for Adrian, Richard, and Emily, Adrian sat down heavily in his chair and put his head in his hands. That went well, Richard said dryly. They hate me. They'll get over it. You just saved the company and caught a massive fraud. Give them a week, and they'll be telling everyone it was their idea to bring you back. Adrian looked up at Emily. You okay? She nodded, not trusting her voice. The weight of what had just happened was starting to sink in. Patterson was gone. Adrian was back. And somehow, impossibly, she was part of it all. I need to call Maria, Adrian said, checking his watch. It's almost 10. Sophie's going to be worried. Go, Richard said. I'll handle the press release draft. We can review it in the morning. Adrian stood and walked to Emily. Come with me. Where? Home. I need to see Sophie. Make sure she's okay before everything changes tomorrow. Emily followed him out of the building. The November air was sharp and cold. Adrian's driver was waiting at the curb in a black car that probably cost more than Emily's entire life. This is weird, Emily said as they slid into the back seat. What is? All of it? Yesterday I was serving coffee. Today I'm riding in a private car after watching a billionaire destroy a corrupt executive in a board meeting. Technically, you're a consultant now. This is probably part of your job description. My job description is fake, and we both know it. Adrian took her hand. I meant what I said in there. I trust you. And I need you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the press says about you or me or us, it doesn't change anything. Adrian, everything's about to change, not the important things. The car pulled up in front of Adrian's building. James the doorman opened the door with a knowing smile. Evening, Mr. Mercer? He knows? Emily whispered as they crossed the lobby. Everyone who works for me knows. I pay them extremely well to be discreet. The apartment was quiet when they entered. Maria was reading on the couch, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up and stood immediately. How did it go? Patterson's out? The board knows everything? Press conference tomorrow at 9. Adrian set down his briefcase. How's Sophie? Asleep. She was asking for you around 8, but I told her you had important work. Maria gathered her things. She left you a drawing on the kitchen table. After Maria left, Adrian and Emily walked to the kitchen. The drawing was done in crayon on construction paper. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. One tall figure labeled Papa, one smaller figure with curly hair labeled Sophie, and one medium-sized figure with long hair labeled Emily. Adrian picked it up with shaking hands. She barely knows you. Kids are perceptive. She wants a family. A complete family. His voice cracked. And I don't know how to give her that without screwing it up. Emily wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back. You're not going to screw it up. You don't know that. I know you nibbled carrots to make your daughter believe in magic rabbits. A man who does that doesn't screw up the important things. Adrian turned in her arms and kissed her. It was softer this time, less desperate. Like maybe they had time, like maybe this could actually work. Stay, he said against her mouth. Adrian, just tonight. It's late. Take the guest room. I don't want to be alone tonight. Emily should have said no, should have gone home to her own apartment and her own life. But she looked at the drawing on the table, at the hope in Adrian's eyes, and found herself nodding. Just tonight, Adrian showed her to the guest room. It was bigger than her entire bedroom at home. with a bathroom that had heated floors and a shower with 6 different settings. Emily stood under the hot water for 20 minutes, trying to process everything that had happened. When she came out in borrowed pajamas that Adrian had left on the bed, she found him sitting in the hallway outside Sophie's room. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Didn't try. I keep thinking about tomorrow, about how different everything's going to be." He looked up at her. "I'm terrified." Emily sat down next to him on the floor. "Of what?" "That I'll turn back into the person I was before. The one who cared more about markets than people. The one Sarah barely recognized at the end." His hands clenched. "I spent 3 years learning how to be human again. What if I forget?" "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you're sitting on the floor outside your daughter's room at 11 p.m., worried about being a good father. The man you're afraid of becoming wouldn't do that." Adrian leaned his head against the wall. "I offered Patterson 20 years in prison without blinking. He was trying to destroy 3,000 people's lives. He deserved it. But I enjoyed it, watching him fall apart, taking everything from him." Adrian's voice was hollow. "What does that make me?" "Human," Emily said simply. "Flawed and angry and protective and human." They sat in silence for a while. Then Sophie's door opened and a small figure in princess pajamas appeared, rubbing her eyes. "Papa, why are you sitting in the hallway?" Adrian pulled Sophie into his lap. "Just thinking, baby girl. Why are you awake?" "Mr. Carrots is scared. There's thunder." Sophie looked at Emily. "You're here." "I'm here." "Are you staying forever?" Emily's heart clenched. "I'm staying tonight." "That's good. Papa smiles more when you're here." Sophie yawned. "Can you both tuck me in?" Adrian looked at Emily. She nodded. They walked Sophie back to her room, a space full of stuffed animals and fairy lights, and the organized chaos of a 7-year-old's imagination. Sophie climbed into bed, clutching Mr. Carrots. Adrian pulled the blanket up to her chin while Emily sat on the edge of the mattress. "Tell me a story," Sophie demanded. "What kind of story?" Adrian asked. "A happy one, with a princess who doesn't need saving." Adrian thought for a moment. Then he began. "Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a tall tower, but she wasn't trapped there. She lived there because she liked the view." Sophie giggled. Emily found herself smiling. Adrian continued the story, weaving a tale about a princess who was also a mathematician, who solved problems with numbers instead of magic, who saved herself and others through cleverness instead of waiting for rescue. It was improvised and messy and nothing like a traditional fairy tale. Sophie loved it. When Adrian finished, Sophie was already half asleep, but she reached out and grabbed Emily's hand. "You're like the princess. You save people with your brain. I think your dad's the one who saves people, sweetie." "No, he says you saved him. I heard him tell Uncle Richard on the phone." Emily looked at Adrian. He had the decency to look embarrassed. "Sleep, monster," Adrian said, kissing Sophie's forehead. "Big day tomorrow." "Every day is big when you're 7, Sophie mumbled, already drifting off. They left the room quietly, pulling the door almost closed. In the hallway, Adrian pulled Emily close. "She's right, you know. You did save me. I didn't do anything. You saw me. The real me. Not the money or the company or the tragedy, just me." Adrian's voice was rough. "Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she just held him, there in the hallway outside his daughter's room, while the city hummed 40 stories below. They eventually made it to their separate rooms. Emily lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell she'd gotten herself into. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. "Where are you? You didn't come home." Emily typed back, "Long story, I'm safe. Tell you everything tomorrow. You better." Emily set an alarm for 6 a.m. and tried to sleep. Her mind wouldn't shut off. She kept replaying the board meeting, Patterson's face, Adrian's hands shaking as he held Sophie's drawing. At some point, she must have slept, because the alarm woke her from dreams she couldn't remember. She found Adrian already awake in the kitchen, making coffee in the pre-dawn darkness. He was wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, his hair messy, looking nothing like the man who'd commanded a boardroom last night. "Couldn't sleep either?" Emily asked. "Nope." He handed her a cup. "Press conference is in 3 hours. I should probably shower and put on the armor. The armor? The suit, the persona, the Adrian Mercer the world expects to see. He sipped his coffee. I've been practicing what to say, how to stand, how to look confident without looking arrogant, how to explain 3 years of lying without sounding crazy. You're not crazy. The tabloids are going to disagree. Billionaire fakes his own disappearance, works as janitor in his own building, catches executive fraud with the help of mysterious woman. This is going to be a circus. I can stay out of it. Richard said they won't mention me. They'll find out anyway. Someone always talks. And when they do, they'll tear you apart trying to figure out who you are and what you want from me. Adrian set down his coffee. I'm sorry. I should have thought about that before I dragged you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to help. Why? Emily thought about it, about the moment in the lobby when she'd first really looked at Adrian and seen someone who didn't fit, about the night in the server room, about the way he talked about Sophie like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Because you reminded me that some things are worth fighting for, she said finally. I've spent 2 years just surviving, working, paying bills, watching my mom get sicker. And then you showed up and started fighting for 3,000 strangers like their lives depended on it, because they did. And I wanted to be part of that, part of something bigger than just getting through another day. Adrian crossed the kitchen and cupped her face in his hands. Come to the press conference. What? Stand with me. Let them see that I'm not doing this alone, that I have someone who believes in me. Adrian, that's insane. The press will crucify me. Probably. But they're going to do that anyway. At least this way you get to control the narrative. You're not the mystery woman hiding in the shadows. You're Emily Carter, consultant, the person who helped save the company. He smiled. Plus, I'm terrified, and having you there might be the only thing that keeps me from passing out. Emily wanted to say no. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea. But she thought about what her mom had said, about letting herself be happy, even if it scared her. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll be there. Yeah? Yeah. But if I get asked about our relationship status, I'm throwing you under the bus. Fair. Adrian went to shower and get ready. Emily borrowed clothes from what Adrian said was Sarah's closet, items that had been too painful to give away but too precious to throw out. A simple black dress that fit almost perfectly. Shoes that were half a size too big, but would work for an hour. She felt like an imposter wearing a dead woman's clothes to stand beside her widowed husband at a press conference. But when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see Sarah. She saw herself. Scared and out of her depth, but determined not to run. At 8:30, they left the apartment. Sophie was still asleep, with Maria already there to take her to school. The plan was to tell Sophie everything tonight, after the press conference, in age-appropriate terms that wouldn't terrify her. Assuming the press conference didn't destroy everything first, the car ride to the Mercer Global building was silent. Adrian held Emily's hand so tight it hurt, but she didn't pull away. When they pulled up to the building, she saw the crowd of reporters already gathered outside. Holy shit, Emily breathed. Richard leaked it early, wanted to control the message. Adrian's face was pale. Ready? Absolutely not. Me neither. They walked into the building together. Past security, past employees who stared, past executives who suddenly looked at Adrian with fear and respect instead of dismissal. The press conference was set up in the main conference room. Richard was already there talking to the legal team. Morrison stood near the podium, looking grim. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, lights. Emily took a seat in the front row. Adrian walked to the podium. The room went silent. Good morning, Adrian said, his voice steady. My name is Adrian Mercer. 3 years ago, after the death of my wife, I stepped away from the public role of running this company. I did this not out of cowardice, but out of necessity. I needed to be a father to my daughter without the constant pressure of being Adrian Mercer, billionaire CEO. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. During this time, I maintained oversight of company operations while my cousin Richard served as acting CEO. What neither Richard nor the board knew was that I had created a second identity and was working inside the building as an operations assistant. I wanted to understand my own company from the ground up, to see how it really functioned, to know the people whose livelihoods depended on the decisions we made. Emily watched Adrian's face. He looked calm, in control. Nothing like the terrified man in his kitchen 2 hours ago. What I discovered was both inspiring and troubling. I found 3,000 dedicated employees doing exceptional work, and I found a senior executive engaging in systematic fraud designed to destroy the company for personal profit. The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction. Adrian held up his hand. I'm not taking questions yet. Last night, our board terminated the employment of Thomas Patterson, our former head of derivatives, after discovering he had been sabotaging our trading algorithms while coordinating with external parties to short our stock. The evidence is substantial. We are cooperating fully with the SEC investigation that will be announced later today. More shouting, more cameras. I'm resuming my role as CEO effective immediately. Richard will continue as COO. Together with the board, we are committed to ensuring this company remains strong, ethical, and focused on the people who make it successful. We will be implementing new oversight procedures, expanding our ethics department, and creating an employee protection program for anyone who reports suspected fraud. Adrian paused. His eyes found Emily in the crowd. I also want to acknowledge someone without whom none of this would have been possible. Emily Carter, our newest consultant, was instrumental in uncovering Patterson's fraud. Her insight, courage, and integrity represent the kind of employees we want to attract and retain. She exemplifies the values we're committed to rebuilding. Every camera in the room turned toward Emily. She felt her face burn, but she kept her expression neutral, the way she'd learned serving coffee to people who treated her like furniture. Adrian continued, I know many of you have questions about my disappearance, my methods, and my decisions. I'll answer what I can. But first, I want to say this to the employees of Mercer Global Investments, most of whom are watching this on the company feed right now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for hiding. I'm sorry for making you doubt the leadership of this company. And I'm sorry for putting my comfort above your certainty. That ends today. He stepped back from the podium. Morrison stepped up to moderate questions. The next 40 minutes were brutal. Reporters demanded details about Adrian's fake identity, asked if he'd broken any laws, questioned his mental stability, implied he was either a genius or insane. Adrian answered everything with a calm Emily didn't know he possessed. Then someone asked the question Emily had been dreading. Mr. Mercer, what is your relationship with Ms. Carter? Are you romantically involved? Adrian looked at Emily. She gave a tiny shake of her head. Ms. Carter is a valued colleague who helped save this company. Our relationship is professional and will remain so. Next question. Emily felt something break and repair itself in her chest at the same time. After the press conference ended, reporters swarmed toward Emily. Security intercepted them, but she could hear the shouted questions. Ms. Carter, how did you meet Mr. Mercer? Are you really just a consultant? How much is he paying you to keep quiet about your relationship? Richard appeared at her elbow. Come on, let's get you out of here. He led her through a back hallway to a private elevator. When the doors closed, Emily leaned against the wall and let out a breath she'd been holding for an hour. You did great, Richard said. I didn't do anything. I just sat there. You didn't run. Trust me, that's more than most people would have done. Richard studied her face. He lied about your relationship status. He was protecting me. He was protecting both of you. The elevator opened on the executive floor. For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. He's been barely alive for 3 years. And then you showed up, and suddenly he's fighting again, caring again. That matters. Emily followed Richard to his office. Through the windows, she could see the press still gathered outside the building, probably would be for days. What happens now? She asked. Now, Adrian spends the next week doing damage control. Meetings with investors, interviews with the press, internal communications with employees. The board will be watching everything he does, waiting for him to mess up. Richard poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher on his desk. And you get to decide if you want to be part of that circus or walk away. He said people would find out about us anyway. They will. Someone always talks. Your photo's already circulating online. By tonight, they'll have your full name, your address, your mom's medical history, probably your 3rd grade report card. Richard's expression was sympathetic. This is the part where I'm supposed to offer you money to disappear. Make your life easier. Protect Adrian's image. Are you offering me money to disappear? No. I'm telling you what's coming so you can make an informed choice. He set down his glass. Adrian needs you. maybe more than he's ready to admit. But he's also about to be under a microscope for months. Every decision questioned, every relationship scrutinized. If you stay, you'll be part of that, and it won't be easy. Emily thought about her mom, about Jessica, about her tiny apartment in Brooklyn that suddenly felt very far away. Then she thought about Adrian's face when he talked about Sophie, about the way he'd taken down Patterson without hesitation to protect people he'd never met, about the drawing on his kitchen table showing 3 stick figures holding hands. "I'm not going anywhere," she said. Richard smiled. "Good. Then let's talk about your actual job. Because right now you're a consultant with no portfolio, and that's going to raise questions." They spent the next hour creating a real role for Emily. Corporate culture advisor, focused on employee welfare and internal ethics. It was vague enough to be believable and specific enough to justify her presence in high-level meetings. At 11, Adrian texted her. "Can you meet me on the roof? Need air." Emily found him on the rooftop garden, standing at the railing overlooking the city. The November wind was cold enough to hurt, but he didn't seem to notice. "Hey," she said. He turned and she saw the exhaustion in his face. "Hey, thanks for coming. How bad is it?" "Stock's down 4%. Board's nervous. Investors want reassurance. Press is calling me everything from a visionary to a sociopath." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Morrison wants me to do 3 more interviews today to control the narrative." "Will you?" "Probably. Don't really have a choice." Adrian looked at her. "I lied about us. In the press conference." "I know. I shouldn't have done that without asking you first. You were protecting me. I get it. But it puts you in an impossible position. If we're seen together, if someone gets a photo, it contradicts what I said. Makes both of us look like liars." Adrian's hands gripped the railing. "I don't know how to do this. How to have something real in a world where everything's performative." Emily moved closer, standing beside him at the railing. "Then we don't perform. We just are. And when people ask, we tell them the truth." "Which is?" "That we're figuring it out. That it's complicated. That it's nobody's business but ours." She took his hand. "You don't have to have all the answers right now." Adrian pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I have to tell Sophie tonight. About the press conference, about me being CEO again, about how everything's about to change. Want me there?" "Please." They stood on the roof for a few more minutes, watching the city move below them. Then Adrian's phone rang. Morrison, demanding his presence at an investor call. "I have to go," Adrian said. "I know. Go save your company. Again." He kissed her forehead and left. Emily stayed on the roof alone, trying to figure out what she'd signed up for. Her phone buzzed. Jessica. Emily. "What the actual hell? You're on the news. Call me right now." Emily sighed and dialed. Jessica answered on the first ring. "Explain, now." Emily told her everything. The whole story, from the spilled coffee to the boardroom to the press conference. Jessica listened without interrupting, which was unusual enough to be concerning. When Emily finished, Jessica was quiet for a long moment. "So you're dating a billionaire," she said finally. "We're not dating. We're figuring things out." "Emily, you stood next to him at a press conference and he publicly thanked you for saving his company. You're dating. It's complicated. It always is with you." Emily heard the concern in her best friend's voice. "I know this is crazy, Jess. I know I should probably run, but I can't. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because for the first time in 2 years, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. Something bigger than just surviving." Emily's voice cracked. "And because when he looks at me, I feel seen, really seen. Not just the girl who serves coffee or the daughter taking care of her sick mom. Just me." Jessica sighed. "Okay. But I'm watching him. And if he hurts you, billionaire or not, I will destroy him." "I believe you." "Good. Now get back to work, corporate culture advisor." Whatever the hell that means. Emily hung up and went back downstairs. The rest of the day blurred past in meetings and phone calls and damage control. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, she was exhausted in ways she didn't know were possible. Adrian found her in the consultant's office Richard had assigned her, staring at a computer screen full of employee handbook revisions she was supposed to review. "Ready to go?" he asked. "Where?" "Home. To tell Sophie that her dad's not actually an operations assistant, and tomorrow she's going to see his face on the news." Emily saved the document and stood. This should go well. Oh, it's going to be a disaster, but at least we'll face it together. They took the car back to Adrian's apartment. Maria met them at the door with a sympathetic expression. She knows something's different, Maria warned. The other kids at school were talking about the news. She's confused. Sophie was in her room, playing with Mr. Carrots. When she saw Adrian and Emily, she looked up with big, worried eyes. Papa, why were the other kids saying your name at school? Adrian sat down on the floor next to her. Emily sat on the bed. I need to tell you something important, baby girl, and I need you to listen carefully. Sophie clutched Mr. Carrots tighter. You know how I work at the big building downtown? The one with all the offices? Yeah. Well, I didn't tell you the whole truth about my job there. I'm not just someone who helps with computers. I actually own the building and the whole company. Sophie's forehead wrinkled. Like you're the boss? Like I'm everybody's boss? But you said you just worked there. I know, and I'm sorry I lied. I wanted to have a normal job so I could spend more time with you without people bothering us all the time. Sophie thought about this. Are you rich? Adrian glanced at Emily. Yes, very rich. How rich? Billionaire rich. Sophie's eyes went wide. Like Batman? Despite everything, Emily laughed. Kind of like Batman, Adrian said, but with less crime fighting and more spreadsheets. Can we get a bat cave? Probably not. Sophie processed this information with the seriousness of a 7-year-old learning her entire world had shifted. Is Emily your Robin? Actually, Emily's more like Alfred, Adrian said. She keeps me from doing stupid things. I like Alfred, Sophie decided. She looked at Emily. Are you going to live with us now? Sophie, Adrian started. Because you should. You make Papa happy, and you're nice. And you know about the carrot thing with Mr. Carrots. Emily's throat felt tight. I don't live here, sweetie. I have my own apartment. But you could live here. We have extra rooms, and Papa's lonely when I'm asleep. Sophie, that's not... Adrian stopped. Actually, that's embarrassingly accurate. Emily looked at Adrian. He looked back. Something passed between them that felt like a question neither was ready to ask. How about we take things one day at a time, Emily suggested. I'll come visit a lot, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. Sophie seemed satisfied with this. Okay, but when we get a bat cave, I want my room to be in it. After Sophie went to bed, Adrian and Emily sat in the living room with glasses of wine. Neither of them was really drinking. She took that better than I expected, Adrian said. She's 7. Everything's an adventure when you're 7. Tomorrow won't be an adventure. Tomorrow, she's going to see her dad's face on every news channel and website. Kids at school are going to treat her differently. Parents are going to try to use her to get to me. Adrian's voice went rough. I spent 3 years protecting her from this, and now it's all falling apart. No, it's not. You're still her dad. You still pick her up from school. You still nibble carrots for the magic rabbit. Emily set down her wine. The world knows who you are now. So what? Sophie already knew the important parts. Adrian looked at her with something that might have been hope. How are you so calm about all of this? I'm not. I'm terrified. I'm way out of my depth, and tomorrow when I wake up and see my face in the tabloids, I'll probably have a breakdown. She smiled. But right now, in this moment, I'm choosing to believe we'll figure it out. We? We? Emily stood. I should go. It's late, and you have another impossible day tomorrow. Adrian walked her to the door. Emily? Yeah? Thank you for all of it, for not running. Day's not over yet. I might still run. But you haven't. That's what matters. He kissed her goodnight, soft and slow, like they had all the time in the world. When Emily got home to her apartment, she found Jessica waiting up with ice cream and wine. Okay, Jessica said, handing her a spoon. Tell me everything I didn't see on the news. So Emily did. And for the first time in a long time, talking about her life felt like telling a story that might actually have a happy ending. The tabloids hit 3 days later, exactly as Adrian had predicted. Emily's face was on the cover of 6 different gossip magazines, each with a more creative headline than the last. Billionaire's Mystery Woman, From Catering Girl to Corporate Queen, and Emily's personal favorite, Gold Digger or Guardian Angel. She was sitting in her new office at Mercer Global, actual office, with a door and everything, when Richard walked in holding a stack of magazines. "Don't read them," he said, dropping them in her trash can. "Nothing good ever came from reading what strangers think about your life." Too late. Already saw them online. Emily turned back to her computer, where she was trying to draft an employee welfare proposal that didn't sound completely ridiculous. "They found my college transcripts. Apparently my 3.2 GPA is evidence that I'm a manipulative genius. Could be worse. They called Adrian unstable and possibly suffering from a mental breakdown." Richard sat in the chair across from her desk. "How are you holding up?" "Fine. Great. Living the dream." Emily's voice cracked on the last word. "That convincing, huh?" Emily closed her laptop. "I got followed to my mom's care facility yesterday. Some photographer wanted a picture of the dying mother angle. Jessica had to physically block him while I got mom inside." Her hands were shaking. "They're treating my life like entertainment, like we're characters in a story they get to narrate. Unfortunately, that's exactly what they're doing." Richard's expression was sympathetic. "And it'll get worse before it gets better. Patterson's arrest hit the news this morning. Federal charges. The SEC is calling it one of the largest internal fraud cases in a decade." "Is that good?" "It's good because it proves Adrian was right. It's bad because now every news outlet wants the full story, which means more attention on how he discovered it, which means more attention on you." Richard leaned forward. "Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Are you staying because you care about Adrian, or because you're caught up in something you don't know how to get out of?" Emily thought about the question, really thought about it. "Both, probably. I care about him, a lot more than I'm ready to admit. But yeah, I'm also terrified and overwhelmed and way out of my depth." She met Richard's eyes. "Does that make me a bad person?" "It makes you human. The bad people are the ones who pretend they have it all figured out." Richard stood. "For what it's worth, Adrian's happier than I've seen him in years. And Sophie asked Maria yesterday if Emily was going to be her new mom, which is either adorable or terrifying depending on your perspective." "Definitely terrifying." "Yeah, I figured." Richard headed for the door, then paused. "He's planning something, by the way. Won't tell me what. But he's been suspiciously cheerful despite everything falling apart around him." After Richard left, Emily tried to focus on work, but couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Adrian was planning something. That could mean anything from a romantic gesture to another corporate takeover. With him, the scale was always impossible to predict. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian, can you leave early today? Need you for something." Emily typed back, "Define early," and define something. 4 p.m. "And it's a surprise." "Wear comfortable shoes. I hate surprises. You'll like this one. Trust me." Emily looked at the clock. It was barely 2. She had 17 emails to answer, a presentation to finish, and a growing pile of employee feedback forms to review. But Adrian was asking, and she'd stopped being able to say no to him somewhere between the server room and the boardroom. At 3:47, Emily changed into the sneakers she kept under her desk and met Adrian in the lobby. He was wearing jeans and a jacket she'd never seen, looking more like the operations assistant than the CEO. "Where are we going?" she asked as they got into his car. "Brooklyn." Emily's stomach dropped. "Why Brooklyn?" "You'll see." They drove in silence, Adrian's hand warm over hers. The city changed as they crossed the bridge. Manhattan's glass towers giving way to brownstones and corner stores, and the Brooklyn Emily actually recognized. Adrian pulled up in front of a building Emily had walked past 1,000 times. It was old, pre-war, the kind of place that should have been condemned but somehow kept standing through sheer stubbornness. "Adrian, what are we doing here?" He got out of the car without answering. Emily followed him inside, up 3 flights of stairs that smelled like old cooking and bleach, to a door at the end of the hall. Adrian knocked. Emily's mom answered. "Emily, what are you—" Margaret stopped when she saw Adrian. "Oh, you must be the famous Adrian." "Mrs. Carter, it's good to finally meet you." Adrian shook her hand. "Thank you for letting me visit." "Well, I wasn't given much choice. You just showed up." But Margaret was smiling. "Come in, both of you. I made tea. Or tried to. The kettle's acting up again." The apartment was tiny, even smaller than Emily remembered. 1 bedroom, a living room that doubled as everything else, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But it was clean and filled with light from the windows, and it smelled like the lavender soap Margaret had used since Emily was a kid. "Mom, what's going on?" Emily asked. "Your young man called me yesterday, said he wanted to talk. I told him to come by today." Margaret settled into her armchair, the one that sagged in the middle from 20 years of use. "He's been very polite, even brought flowers." Emily saw the bouquet on the table, white roses, her mom's favorite. "Adrian, what is this?" "Sit down, both of you." Adrian looked nervous, actually nervous. "Mrs. Carter, Emily, I need to talk to you about something important." Emily sat on the couch. Adrian stayed standing, pacing like he was about to give a presentation he hadn't prepared for. "Emily told me about your situation," Adrian said to Margaret, "about the treatments, the costs, the insurance cap. And I know Emily's been working herself to death trying to cover everything while you insist on staying independent because you don't want to be a burden." Margaret's face tightened. "Emily, you told him—" "Let me finish, please." Adrian stopped pacing. "I also know that Emily won't accept help because she's convinced it would make her obligated to me, that it would change what we have into something transactional." He looked at Emily. "So I'm not offering help. I'm offering a job." "A job," Margaret repeated. "I'm creating a foundation, the Sarah Mercer Foundation for Family Support. It'll provide financial assistance, resources, and advocacy for families dealing with medical crises. Job loss, overwhelming medical debt, insurance gaps, all the things that destroy families when they're already at their most vulnerable." Adrian pulled out a folder from his jacket. "I need someone to run it. Someone who understands what these families are going through because they've lived it. Someone who won't treat the people we help like charity cases, but like human beings who deserve dignity." Margaret took the folder. Inside were documents, budgets, mission statements, all with Margaret Carter listed as executive director. "You want me to run a foundation?" Margaret said slowly. "I want you to help families like yours, to use your experience, the good and the terrible, to make sure no one else has to choose between treatment and bankruptcy." Adrian's voice was quiet. "The salary is $200,000 a year. Medical benefits are comprehensive, including coverage for ongoing cancer treatments with no lifetime cap. You'd have full autonomy over how the foundation operates. I'm just the funding." Emily couldn't breathe. She looked at her mom, who was staring at the documents like they might disappear if she looked away. "Why?" Margaret asked. "You don't know me. Why would you do this?" "Because Emily won't let me help her, but maybe she'll let me help you." Adrian finally sat down. "And because my wife died believing that people with money have a responsibility to the people who don't. She'd be furious with me for sitting on billions while families like yours suffer. This foundation, it's not charity. It's what I should have done 3 years ago instead of hiding." Margaret looked at Emily. "Did you know about this?" "No, I swear I had no idea. He's asking me to work for him." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" Emily thought about it, about her mom having purpose again, having something to wake up for besides treatments and doctor's appointments, about families getting help from someone who understood their pain instead of pitying it. "Yeah, Mom, I'm okay with it." Margaret turned back to Adrian. "I have 2 conditions. Name them. First, I want full transparency. Every dollar spent, every family helped. I want to know where it's going and why. No hidden agendas." "Done. You'll have complete access to all foundation accounts and authority to approve all expenditures. Second, if you hurt my daughter, I will destroy you, billionaire or not." Adrian smiled. "Jessica said the same thing. I'm starting to think Emily surrounds herself with people who could actually pull it off." "Smart girl, my Emily." Margaret set down the folder. "When do I start?" "Whenever you're ready. The foundation office will be separate from Mercer Global. You'll hire your own staff, set your own policies. I'll provide funding and stay out of your way." Margaret was crying now, quiet tears running down her face. "I thought I was done. Thought the cancer would take me before I got to do anything that mattered again." Emily moved to her mom's chair and wrapped her arms around her. "You matter, Mom. You've always mattered. But now I get to prove it." Margaret squeezed Emily's hand. "Now I get to fight for other people the way you've been fighting for me." They stayed for another hour, discussing details and logistics, and Margaret's vision for how the foundation should work. By the time they left, Margaret looked more alive than Emily had seen her in months. In the car, Emily finally let herself fall apart. The tears came hard and fast, years of fear and exhaustion pouring out. Adrian pulled over and just held her while she cried. "I can't believe you did that," she said when she could finally speak. "Your mom deserves it, and you deserve not to carry everything alone. But that's millions of dollars for someone you just met. It's money I wasn't using for anything except accumulating more money. At least this way it matters." Adrian wiped her tears with his thumb. "And honestly, seeing your mom's face when she realized she could help people, that's worth more than any investment return I've ever made." Emily kissed him, tasting salt and something that felt dangerously close to love. "You're insane. You've mentioned that before." "I'm serious. Nobody does this. Nobody just creates a foundation and hands it to a stranger. Your mom's not a stranger. She's the mother of the woman who saved my company and possibly my life. That makes her family." Adrian started the car again. "Speaking of which, Sophie wants to know if you're coming to dinner tomorrow. She's been practicing setting the table with 4 plates instead of 3. 4? You, me, Sophie, and Mr. Carrots. Apparently he eats at the table now." Despite everything, Emily laughed. "Of course he does." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her mom's face, about the foundation, about the way Adrian had looked at Margaret like giving away millions was the most natural thing in the world. She kept waiting for the catch, for the condition, for the moment when he'd reveal what he actually wanted in return. But the catch never came. At 2 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and texted Adrian. "Are you awake?" The response came immediately. Unfortunately, Sophie had a nightmare. "We're watching Frozen for the 3rd time this week. Can I call you?" Her phone rang 30 seconds later. "Hey," Adrian's voice was quiet. She could hear Elsa singing in the background. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Emily pulled her blanket tighter around herself. "Why did you really create the foundation?" "I told you to help families like yours. But there has to be more to it than that. People like you don't just give away money because it feels good." Adrian was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "The night Sarah died, we were in the hospital for 7 hours before I realized I hadn't checked on Sophie. Maria was with her, and she was fine, but I'd completely forgotten about my daughter because I was too busy trying to save my wife." He took a shaky breath. "And I remember thinking, what if I wasn't rich? What if I couldn't afford the best doctors, the private rooms, the specialists flying in from around the country? What if I'd had to choose between being with Sarah and making sure Sophie was taken care of? What if I'd had to worry about money on top of everything else?" Emily's throat felt tight. "The money didn't save Sarah," Adrian continued, "but it meant I could focus on being with her instead of drowning in logistics and debt and impossible choices. Your mom, every family the foundation helps, they deserve that same dignity. They deserve to focus on healing and being together instead of wondering how they'll pay for tomorrow. You're a good person, you know that?" "I'm really not. I'm selfish and scared, and I've spent 3 years hiding while people like your mom suffered." His voice cracked. "But maybe I can be better. With help." "You're already better than you think." They talked for another hour while Sophie slept between songs and Frozen played on repeat. Adrian told her about the plans for the foundation's first year, about the lawyers setting up the nonprofit status, about how he'd already identified 200 families who needed immediate help. Emily told him about her mom's reaction after they'd left, how Margaret had called crying, saying she finally had a reason to keep fighting. And somewhere in that conversation, Emily realized she'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. She'd stopped expecting Adrian to turn into someone else, someone cruel or demanding or transactional. He was just Adrian, broken and trying and doing his best to use his second chance for something good. She could work with that. The next 3 weeks were chaos. Patterson's trial date was set. The SEC investigation expanded to include Vanguard strategic partners and 17 other executives who'd profited from the scheme. Adrian spent 12 hours a day in meetings, interviews, and damage control. And somehow, in the middle of all that, he and Emily figured out how to be together. It wasn't smooth. There were arguments about boundaries and publicity and how much of their relationship should be public. There were days when Emily wanted to quit because the pressure was too much, and days when Adrian pushed her away because he was terrified of losing someone else he loved. But they kept showing up. Adrian came to the care facility to visit Margaret, helping her plan the foundation's launch and listening to her stories about Emily's childhood. Emily started having dinner at Adrian's apartment 3 nights a week, learning Sophie's bedtime routine and the specific way Mr. Carrots needed to be tucked in. Jessica and Richard became unlikely allies, bonding over their shared concern for Adrian and Emily's complete inability to do anything the easy way. And slowly, the pieces of their separate lives started fitting together into something that looked like family. The foundation launched on a Friday in early December. They'd rented a small community center in Brooklyn for the event, nothing fancy, just the people who mattered. Margaret stood at the podium wearing a new suit that Emily had helped her pick out, looking stronger than she had in a year. "My name is Margaret Carter," she began. "And 6 months ago, I was ready to give up. The cancer was winning, the bills were drowning us, and my daughter was killing herself trying to save me while I pretended I was fine." Her voice wavered but didn't break. "Then someone offered me a second chance. Not charity, not pity, a chance to fight for other families the way my daughter fought for me." Emily stood at the back of the room next to Adrian, holding his hand so tight her fingers ached. Sophie was next to them, surprisingly quiet, sensing this was important. The Sarah Mercer Foundation exists because someone understood that families in crisis don't need judgment, Margaret continued. They need support, resources, someone who sees them as people instead of problems. And I promise you, every family we help, every person who walks through our doors, they'll be treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. The room applauded. Margaret stepped down from the podium and immediately started talking to the families in attendance, families who'd already been approved for assistance, families who'd have their medical bills covered and their job searches supported, and their children's futures protected. Adrian watched his mother-in-law work the room, and Emily saw tears in his eyes. "Sarah would have loved this," he said quietly. "I wish I could have met her. She would have liked you. Probably would have called me an idiot for waiting so long to let someone in." Adrian pulled Emily closer. She was good at that, seeing what I needed before I knew I needed it. Sophie tugged on Emily's sleeve. "Can I go get cookies?" "Sure, sweetie. Don't eat more than 3. I'll eat exactly 4. Sophie. But she was already gone, making a beeline for the refreshment table with the determination of a 7-year-old on a mission. Adrian laughed. "She's definitely my kid." "Stubborn and brilliant?" "Yeah, I'd noticed." They stayed at the event for another 2 hours, watching Margaret work and families receive hope, and Sophie charm every adult in the room. When they finally left, the December air was sharp enough to hurt, but the sky was clear and full of stars you couldn't usually see in the city. "I've been thinking," Adrian said as they walked to the car. Sophie was between them, holding both their hands. "Dangerous," Emily teased. "I want to step back from the CEO position, make Richard permanent instead of acting." Emily stopped walking. "What?" "I've spent 3 years learning that I don't actually want to run a company. I want to spend time with Sophie. I want to help Margaret build the foundation. I want to create more programs like it." He looked at Emily. "And I want to be with you without my job constantly pulling me away. Adrian, you just got back. The board will think you're unstable. Let them. I'll stay on as chairman, keep oversight, make the big decisions. But the day-to-day operations? Richard's better at it anyway. He actually enjoys the meetings and the politics." Adrian squeezed her hand. "I spent too many years doing what I thought I should do instead of what I wanted to do. I'm done with that." Sophie looked up at them. "Does this mean you'll pick me up from school every day again?" "Every single day, monster." "Good, because Lily's dad only comes twice a week, and she's very sad about it." They got in the car and drove back to Manhattan. Sophie fell asleep in the back seat, Mr. Carrots clutched under her chin. Emily looked at Adrian, really looked at him, and saw someone who'd finally figured out what mattered. "I love you," she said. Adrian nearly drove off the road. "What?" "I love you. I'm terrified, and this is probably a terrible idea, and we're definitely going too fast, but I love you anyway." Adrian pulled the car over at the next safe spot and kissed her like the world was ending and she was the only thing tethering him to earth. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. "I love you too. Have for a while, was just waiting for you to catch up." Arrogant. Accurate. From the back seat, Sophie mumbled in her sleep. "Finally, took forever." They both laughed, quiet and careful not to wake her fully. The board approved Adrian's transition to chairman the following week. Richard became permanent CEO with a salary increase and a warning from Adrian that if he destroyed the company, he'd come out of retirement specifically to kick his ass. Patterson was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Vanguard Strategic Partners dissolved under the weight of the investigation. 12 other executives were indicted, and Mercer Global's stock price climbed to record highs on the news that the company had rooted out corruption and doubled down on ethical practices. The press eventually moved on to other scandals. Emily's face faded from the tabloids. She got promoted to Director of Corporate Culture, a role she actually understood now, working to make sure employees felt valued instead of exploited. And on a Saturday in March, 6 months after Emily spilled coffee in a conference room and met a quiet operations assistant who saw her as more than furniture, Adrian asked her to move in. They were in his apartment, their apartment now, in Emily's head at least, making pancakes while Sophie did homework at the kitchen table. It was mundane and domestic, and nothing like the grand romantic gesture Emily might have expected once upon a time. "I've been thinking," Adrian said, flipping a pancake that definitely wasn't ready to flip. That phrase never ends well. "Sophie needs more consistency, and you're here 4 nights a week anyway, and your lease is up next month." He rescued the pancake before it could become a complete disaster. "Move in with us." Emily looked at Sophie, who'd stopped pretending to do homework and was watching them with barely contained excitement. "Did you know about this?" Emily asked her. "Papa said I couldn't say anything until he asked, but I already cleared out the closet in the blue room for your clothes, and I made a list of movies we can watch together. And Sophie, breathe." Sophie took an exaggerated breath. "So can you move in, please? I promise I'll be good, and Mr. Carrots won't steal your socks anymore." Emily looked at Adrian, who was watching her with hope and fear tangled together in his expression. This was insane. They'd known each other for 6 months. She was 23 years younger than him. They came from completely different worlds. But Sophie was looking at her like Emily held the key to happiness, and Adrian was looking at her like she was home. "Okay," Emily said. Sophie shrieked and launched herself at Emily, hugging her so hard Emily nearly fell over. "Does this mean you're my mom now?" "Whoa, okay. Let's slow down. Because Lily said you have to live together first before you can get married and have babies, and I want a little sister who's not a rabbit." Adrian rescued Emily from Sophie's enthusiastic strangling. "Monster, we're taking things one step at a time. Emily's moving in. That's all we're committing to right now. But eventually we'll see. Now go finish your homework before we eat pancakes." Sophie ran back to the table, already planning God knows what in her 7-year-old brain. Adrian wrapped his arms around Emily from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Sorry about that. She's been planning our entire future since the second time you stayed for dinner." "She's not the only one." "No?" Emily turned in his arms. "I've been thinking about it too. About what this could be. What we could be." She touched his face. "And it terrifies me, because I could lose this. Lose you. Lose her. And I don't know if I'd survive it." "Then we don't lose it. We fight for it. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Adrian kissed her forehead. "I spent 3 years running from anything that could hurt me. And all it did was make me numb. I'm done being numb." "Me too." They ate pancakes that were burnt on one side and raw in the middle. Sophie told them about her day in excruciating detail, including a 15-minute story about a crayon that fell behind the radiator. Mr. Carrot sat in his own chair with a tiny plate that Sophie insisted he needed. It was messy and chaotic, and nothing like the life Emily had imagined for herself a year ago. It was perfect. Moving in took 3 days because Emily didn't actually own that much. Most of her stuff fit in the back of Adrian's car. The heaviest thing she brought was her mom's old cookbook, the one with notes in the margins and stains from decades of use. Margaret came to help unpack, looking healthier than she had in years. The foundation was thriving, helping 50 families in its first 3 months. The work exhausted her, but it was the good kind of exhaustion, the kind that came from purpose instead of despair. "You're really doing this," Margaret said, hanging Emily's clothes in what used to be Sarah's closet. "Yeah, I really am." "You're happy." "Terrified. But yeah, also happy." Margaret set down the hanger she was holding and pulled Emily into a hug. "Your father would have liked him. Would have given him all kinds of grief about spoiling you, but he would have approved." Emily's dad had died when she was 12. She barely remembered his voice anymore, just the feeling of being safe when he was around. "You think?" she asked. "I know. He always said you'd find someone who saw how brilliant you were. Someone who didn't need you to be smaller to make them feel bigger." Margaret pulled back, her eyes wet. "Adrian sees you, baby. All of you. That's rarer than money could ever be." That night, after Sophie went to bed and Margaret went home, Emily and Adrian sat on the couch in the living room that was now officially hers too. The city glittered outside the windows, millions of people living their own complicated lives. "Tell me something," Emily said. "What? Do you ever regret it? Hiding for 3 years? Missing out on running your company?" Adrian thought about it. "Sometimes. I missed Sarah's first foundation gala, missed seeing her vision come to life, missed 3 years of Sophie's childhood because I was too scared to be present." He laced his fingers through Emily's. "But if I hadn't hidden, I wouldn't have been in that conference room, wouldn't have met you. And I can't regret that." "Even with all the chaos we caused?" "Especially because of the chaos. You taught me that sometimes the right thing is messy, that you can't protect yourself from pain by shutting down, that the only way through is through." He smiled. Very wise for someone who used to serve coffee for a living. "Hey, coffee service is an art form." "I'm aware. I've seen you work." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when you've stopped trying to fill every gap with words. "Adrian?" Emily said after a while. "Yeah? Thank you for seeing me before you knew I could help you, before any of this happened. Just for seeing me when I was invisible to everyone else." "Emily, you were never invisible. You were just surrounded by blind people." He pulled her closer. "And for the record, you saved me long before we fixed that algorithm. You saved me the moment you called me out for staring at formulas like they'd personally offended me." Emily laughed, remembering that night in the lobby. The beginning of everything. "We're kind of a disaster, you know that? The best kind." 6 months later, Adrian officially stepped down as chairman of Mercer Global Investments. He kept his ownership stake, but transferred all operational control to the board. The press called it a scandal. The employees called it a relief. Richard called it long overdue. Adrian didn't care what anyone called it. He was too busy running the foundation alongside Margaret, creating 3 more programs for families in crisis, and showing up to every single one of Sophie's school events with Emily by his side. The tabloids still occasionally ran stories about the billionaire who gave it all up for love or some equally dramatic headline. But mostly, people forgot about Adrian Mercer, the CEO, and just knew him as the guy who funded the foundation that had helped their cousin or their neighbor or their friend. On Sophie's 8th birthday, they had a party at the apartment with too much cake and too many presents. 20 kids ran screaming through the rooms while adults tried desperately to maintain some semblance of control. Emily found Adrian hiding in the kitchen, looking overwhelmed. "You okay?" she asked. "There are 20 children in my home, and I don't know any of their names." "You know at least 3 of them." "That's not as comforting as you think." But he was smiling. "Sophie's happy. Sophie's hyper on sugar and probably won't sleep for 3 days, but yes, she's happy." Adrian pulled Emily close, swaying slightly to music that was only playing in his head. "I've been thinking. Still dangerous. I want to marry you." Emily's heart stopped. "What?" "Not today. Not even this year. Whenever you're ready. But I want to marry you. I want Sophie to have the family she keeps drawing pictures of. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life and know that we chose each other every single day." "Adrian, you don't have to answer now. I just needed you to know that this isn't temporary for me, that I'm all in." Emily looked at the man who'd hired her to help save his company, who'd given her mom a purpose, who'd let her daughter steal Emily's socks and claim her as family before they'd even officially met. The man who'd been terrified of being seen and had somehow found the courage to be completely visible. "Ask me again in a year," she said. "Yeah?" "Yeah. Let's see if you still like me when I've lived here long enough to have annoying habits you can't ignore." "I already know your annoying habits. You reorganize my kitchen cabinets when you're stressed, and you steal all the blankets at night. See? Give it a year and you'll be desperate to get rid of me." Adrian kissed her, soft and sure. Not possible. A year later, almost to the day, he asked again. They were on the roof of the building, the same place they'd stood after the press conference that changed everything. The city stretched out below them, infinite and full of possibility. "Emily Carter," Adrian said, getting down on one knee with a ring that probably cost more than a small country. "Will you marry me and make an honest man out of a former fake operations assistant?" Emily looked at the ring, at Adrian's hopeful face, at the life they'd built from coffee spills and corporate fraud, and the kind of messy, imperfect love that actually lasted. "Yes," she said, "but I'm keeping my last name." "I'd expect nothing less." They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the foundation headquarters, surrounded by the families they'd helped and the people who'd helped them. Margaret walked Emily down the aisle. Richard stood as Adrian's best man, and Sophie was the flower girl, though she spent most of the ceremony whispering loudly to Mr. Carrots about when she'd get her baby sister. The press covered it, of course, but Emily had stopped caring what strangers thought about her life. She'd learned that the only opinions that mattered were the ones from people who actually knew you, who saw your worst moments and stuck around anyway. Years later, when people asked Emily how she'd ended up married to a billionaire, she never told them the fairy tale version. She told them the truth, that she'd spilled coffee and met a man who was hiding from himself, that they'd saved a company and each other in the process, that love wasn't clean or simple or anything like the movies. It was messy. It was choosing each other even when it was hard. It was burnt pancakes and stolen blankets and a 7-year-old deciding you were family before you'd even agreed to stay. And it was worth every complicated, imperfect, beautiful moment. Because in the end, the greatest thing Adrian Mercer ever saved wasn't his company or his fortune or his reputation. It was his capacity to love again, to let someone see him, really see him, and trust that they wouldn't use that vulnerability against him. And the greatest thing Emily Carter ever found wasn't wealth or status or security. It was the knowledge that she deserved to be seen, that her worth wasn't measured by what she could do for others, but by who she was when she stopped trying to be useful and just let herself be human. They were broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided broken was okay as long as you weren't broken alone. And sometimes, on quiet Sunday mornings when Sophie was still asleep and the city hadn't quite woken up, Emily and Adrian would sit on their couch and marvel at the life they'd built from a spilled cup of coffee and the courage to be honest about who they really were. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And that was enough.